Chapter 2045, Demon Mountain. Futian looked ahead. There was a large lake. Beyond the lake, there was an endless mountain range. The end of the mountain range was nowhere in sight. As expected, it was a world of its own, Futian thought to himself. This was the Fuyao's secret zone of Domain Chief's manor. The vast army entered the zone. They were all Renhuangs. Compared to the lineup that entered Eastern Deity Island last time, this group was far more powerful. The group that entered Eastern Deity Island last time did not have top-level Renhuangs. This time, many of them were 8th tier and 9th tier Renhuangs. They even had figures such as Jiang Yueli from Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow among them. Jiang Yueli was an 8th tier Renhuang with a flawless Great Path. Her combat ability was almost at the peak of the Renhuang plane. Aside from the giant-level figures, it was difficult for anyone else to stand against her. At that moment, silhouettes traversed across the sky and advanced on the surface of the lake. Even though there were fateful encounters in the secret zone, the Renhuangs would certainly not easily come across them. Hence, they did not need to be in such a hurry. "Let's go," said Li Changxing as he also IED'd the cultivators of the Wangshan watchtower forward. The vast army of Renhuangs scattered beyond the lake. Some of them traveled through the air while others moved on the ground. Their speeds were different, so the cultivators, naturally, got separated. However, Futian felt that he was constantly being watched. He did not need to investigate to know who was watching him. The cultivators of the Great Yan ancient royal family and Lishao Palace had wanted to kill him. Now that they had entered into this zone, they would not easily let him escape them. These two major forces also showed signs of having joined forces to target Wangshan Watchtower. It was possible that they were not just targeting him but the entire Wangshan Watchtower. The lake was calm and peaceful. Everyone had just passed over it. Nothing had happened. Futian's group passed over the lake and stood in the region of the desolate mountain range. Futian gazed far into the distance. Even when he released his will, he still could not make out the ends of the mountain range. His will could only cover a part of it. The mountain range gave off a desolate and ancient air. It was as though this secret zone had existed since the distant past. Many Renhuangs had serious expressions. They did not dare to lower their guard. Since they were in a secret zone, it would not be an ordinary place. As the Renhuangs entered the mountain range, they headed out in different directions like fish in the ocean. Futian's group kept heading forward. This ancient secret zone had an ominous aura that gave off a faint pressure. As they continued to advance, someone discovered an extremely frightening scene to the left of the mountain range. There was a desolate world over there. Endless purple lightning could faintly be seen. The terrifying might of the great path of destruction emanated from there. Those present did not know what sort of place that was. However, many Renhuangs headed in that direction. Many cultivators from the desolate God Palace stopped in their tracks and glanced over there. Desolation said, "Let's go take a look." As he said this, his group headed over to the region. When they saw that the cultivators of the desolate God Palace were heading over, many other cultivators backed down. The abilities of those from desolate God Palace were too powerful. If there were a fateful encounter there, the other cultivators would have no means of contending with desolate God Palace. They might as well give up and search other places. Futian's group also saw the region. However, they did not head over, instead continuing to press on. After a short while, they saw a horrifying scene to their right. The temperature there was surprisingly high. There was intense heat emanating from the area. As they glanced over from afar, they actually saw that the mountain peaks were scorched red. On the mountainsides, terrifying magma was flowing. The mountains in the region were all crimson. No one knew what sort of flame treasures were hidden there. However, after they passed through this region, they discovered a world of ice and snow that was extremely cold. The world of ice and snow and the world of flames were next to each other. They formed their own individual spaces. The world of ice and snow was very chilly. However, Futian and the others ignored both spaces and continued advancing. Ahead of them, there was a jet-black mountain in their way. The ancient, jet-black mountain was shrouded in darkness. It gave off a mysterious vibe. One could sense the oppressive aura emanating from the mountain from extremely far away. "What is that place?" someone asked in a low voice. Futian revealed a strange look and said, "Elder brother, why is it that I sense that this space is sealed off? I feel as though a continent was sealed off and became the secret zone of Domain Chief's Manor." Li Changxing replied, "The secret zone of the Domain Chief's Manor is not limited to one area. The Fuyao secret zone is just one of the many secret zones. However, your guess may be correct. The Domain Chief is proficient in the Great Path of Sealing. There is also an absolute treasure in the Domain Chief's Manor. Indeed, it might be possible that this secret zone is a sealed-off space." They were heading to a place up ahead that was near to the Black Mountain Range. As they gradually approached the Black Mountain Range, they could sense an even more ominous aura coming from its direction. Bang! At that moment, they heard a terrifying explosion from far away. A scream followed it. The crowd saw Ren Huang flying backward. He was sent flying out from the mountain range. Fresh blood splattered around in the sky as he fell to the ground. "What happened?" The figures headed over. Many people came up beside the injured Ren Huang. They saw that his flesh had been torn off his body. It was a gruesome sight to behold. Demonic beasts, thought the crowd as they glanced over at the ancient Black Mountain. Futian's group looked over there from a distance. Futian commented, "Such powerful demonic qi. There are many demonic beasts," said Zifeng, who was beside him. She was a phoenix demon and was naturally very sensitive to demonic qi. She could sense that there were many demonic beasts in the mountain up ahead. Futian revealed a pondering look. This place seemed more and more like a sealed space. It was as though a continent had been sealed away. After all, to harm the cultivators in the secret zone, it would take a demon emperor. Even if such a demon were to assume human form and leave this place, their standing would not be low. The vast mountain range was formed from countless connected black mountains. It stretched across the land, seemingly sealing off the way ahead. If they wanted to continue forwards, they had to pass through the Black Mountain Range. At that moment, there was the sound of a violent collision. The crowd raised their heads and looked up at the sky above the mountain range. A huge, terrifying beast appeared there. Its wings blocked out the sky when fully spread. They could not make out what sort of demon it was. They only saw a gigantic pair of black wings sweep out, directly sweeping away the Renhuangs who were attempting to fly over the mountain range. A Renhuang, who was not strong enough, was immediately torn to shreds, and they perished on the spot. This caused the hearts of many to tremble uncontrollably. Frightening dangers were lurking in the Fuyao's secret zone. This journey was not as easy as they imagined it to be. "You cannot pass over the mountain range. It would help if you went through it," a silhouette said from the sky above. The person who had spoken was Ninghua. As he said this, he traversed the sky and immediately entered the Black Mountain Range from above. Once he entered, a terrifying aura emerged and enveloped the endless space. A voice said in a cold tone, "You have come again. Long time no see," Ninghua replied. He then kept advancing, heading deep into the mountain range from the sky. Very soon, the terrifying sound of violent collisions of the great path could be heard. It caused the hearts of the crowd to beat even faster. As expected of Ninghua, a cultivator said in a low voice. He told them that they could not pass over the mountain range from above, yet he had immediately done so, not fearing the demons within the mountain range. Ninghua already treated this place as his training ground. "Let's go!" The various cultivators gradually entered into the Black Mountains. No one directly made their way in from above like Ninghua. After all, they were not Ninghua. They did not have his abilities and were not as familiar as he was with the Fuyao's secret zone. For Ninghua, this secret zone was merely his training ground. "Let us also enter," Li Changxing said. The group immediately nodded their heads and headed deep into the ancient mountains. Futian's group entered the mountain range. The precipitous peaks pierced straight through the clouds. Far away, the valleys were so deep that they could not see the bottom. They could faintly hear a droning sound. There was also a powerful demonic qi around them. They expanded their wills but soon discovered that their wills were blocked off in many places. It was as though there was a natural shroud that blocked off their wills. Up ahead, in all directions, there were people also moving forward along the mountainside. From time to time, the shadow of a demonic beast would pass by. Yet, so as not to disturb the more powerful demonic beasts within the mountain, the crowd left these demonic beasts alone. After all, this was unknown territory for them. No one knew what sort of dangers they would encounter. As time passed, the Renhuangs ventured deeper into the range. However, they still had not reached the end. They appeared to have reached the inner parts of the Black Mountain Range. The space above them was completely blocked off. It was filled with a mysterious aura. It seemed as though they would never be able to get out. Of course, they were not moving very fast. This area was too mysterious. In the secret zone, they also did not dare to be careless. At that moment, silhouettes flashed ahead. Many people looked over in that direction. A group of figures appeared in different positions. Each of these figures had a terrifying aura. Demonic chi circled around them. They were all demon emperors. They quietly stood there, not saying a word. They merely watched the various cultivators. At that moment, another silhouette descended from the sky. It was a youth dressed in a fur coat. His skin was smooth and fair, and he appeared very handsome. He had a deep gaze that seemed to contain a bizarre light as he swept a glance across the crowd. There are so many demon emperors in the secret zone? Futian wondered. This might only be a portion of their numbers. There might be even more demons hidden away in this endless Black Mountain Range. Had they been sealed away in this secret zone? Leave now, a demonic beast ordered. He was actually chasing the crowd away. This caused many cultivators to reveal strange looks. However, although the Renhuangs were not happy about this, they still dashed forward on their own. They did not want to cause trouble. The secret zone was becoming more and more mysterious. It seemed to contain some secrets. Futian glanced over at these demonic beasts. He wanted to capture one of them to interrogate them about the situation in this place. However, it was not convenient to do so. If he angered the other party, it would bring him no benefit in this mountain range. They continued along the path carved out of the mountainside. Their steps were light, and they progressed at a rapid pace. Not long after they left, the demonic beasts left in another direction. Did they appear just to hasten us on our way? A Renhuang asked in a low voice, unable to make head or tail about the situation. As they advanced, they saw the figures of demonic beasts flash past again, leaving behind afterimages. They kept passing by the cultivators. Aside from demon emperors, there were also many demon saints with less powerful cultivation. This caused many people to reveal bizarre expressions. This seemed to be a mountain range of demonic beasts. As more and more demonic beasts passed by the cultivators, many people realized that something was off. What is going on? Someone turned around and asked the person beside them. They seem to be hurrying towards the same place. Someone replied. Many Renhuangs glanced over at the demonic beasts passing by. Cold looks flashed past in their eyes. They intended to attack, wanting to capture a demonic beast for interrogation. For now, these demonic beasts seem to be completely ignoring us and allowing us to pass unobstructed. It might be that they have no time to care about us. Something might have happened, Li Changxing deduced softly. Many people nodded in agreement. Futian turned around and looked behind him. He saw that little Condor had quietly left the area where the group was and had headed into the mountain range. Not long after, he saw little Condor's silhouette appear in another area. He had mingled into a group of demonic beasts and was moving with them. His figure flashed forwards as he sought out his prey. Very soon, he saw a female demon with long horns on her head. He ordered, "Stop right there." The female demon was pretty good-looking. She was a Bai Zhe and was a demon saint. She turned around and asked Black Wind Condor, "Senior, how may I help you? I have just emerged from cultivating in seclusion. Where are all of you headed?" Black Wind Condor asked. Demonic chi circled around his body. "There is a disturbance in Demon God Temple. the female demon explained. I need to make haste. Senior, do you want to head over together? She was not afraid of Black-Winged Condor's demonic might. In this zone, the Baizé demon clan was also very powerful. She did not mind his presence. You may go on ahead, Black-Winged Condor said expressionlessly. However, his eyes revealed a strange light as he transmitted this information to Futian. Where Futian was, he looked at the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower after he received this information. He then said to Li Changxing and Zhong Chan over transmitted thoughts. Elder brothers, my demonic beast companion has just gotten information on the situation. There is actually a demon god temple in this mountain range of demonic beasts. The demonic beasts are on the move because there is a disturbance in demon god temple. This caused Li Changxing and Zhong Chan to reveal strange looks. There was actually a demon god temple in the secret zone. Could it be that the demon god temple was the ruins of a demon god? If that was so, this secret zone was indeed frightening. Within this mountain range, there was more than one clan of demonic beasts. They were all sealed within this space. Buzz. At that moment, a silhouette flashed and appeared among the crowd. The figure said, I have just caught a demonic beast. There is a demon god temple in the mountain range. Shall we go over and take a look? As he said this, all the Renhuangs in the area looked over at the figure who had spoken. Futian also looked over in that direction. He recognized this person. This person had challenged him on the law battle platform. He was very powerful and was proficient in the Sword of Light. It was Chen. Is this true? Someone asked. Of course, why would I lie? My cultivation is not high enough to handle this situation. Otherwise, I would not have shared this information with everyone, Chen said with a smile. The crowd immediately believed what he had said. Although Chen was powerful, after seeing the demon emperors in the mountain range, he would have surely perished if he had gone off alone. There was no chance of him making it out alive. He could only tell the others of this news. Are we going? Someone asked. This might be a matter of life or death. After all, the demonic beasts moved in groups, and there were many powerful demons. Once the battle began, there might be casualties. Dong! Suddenly, the crowd felt their hearts throb. Everyone's gazes turned sharp as they looked far off into the distance, in the direction where the demonic beasts were headed. Dong! Dong! The sensation grew more and more intense. The crowd felt their hearts beating even faster. They were about to face trouble. Chapter 2047 marked. Should they go? In different locations, many cultivators glanced at each other. Many of them were conversing via transmitted thoughts. You are all among the upper echelons of the Donghua domain. What is there to hesitate about? Asked Chen as he looked at the crowd. His tone seemed to carry a different kind of aura. Many top figures nodded their heads slightly. It was not that they did not have such boldness, but that they were concerned about the junior Renhuangs beside them who had weaker cultivation. Let's go take a look, someone said. All right. Everyone, let's head over together. We can also look out for each other. If we encounter enemies that we cannot defeat, proceed with caution. Someone responded. In different areas, the various cultivators came to a consensus. They then set off in the same direction the demonic beasts were headed. As they followed the demonic beasts deeper into the mountain range, the violent throbbing sound could still be heard. It caused their hearts to beat uncontrollably. Even if they did not follow the demonic beasts, they could still locate the demon god temple based on this beat. When they noticed the movements of the cultivators, the demonic beasts who passed by swept cold glances at them. They seemed to look at the cultivators with disdain. Were these human cultivators also heading to the demon god temple? As they advanced, the various cultivators gradually sensed a huge pressure acting on them. They could faintly sense that a terrifying demonic might was descending upon them. Their hearts throbbed non-stop. Even their blood vessels were pulsating. This caused them to slow down in their tracks. They were worried that accidents would happen. They could slowly see frightening currents flowing around their bodies, being drawn into the distance. It was like a dragon gulping down a river. The currents of the great path were being sucked up into the distance. Over there. As they looked in the direction where the currents flowed towards, the crowd saw an illusory black temple. This black temple was frenziedly consuming the currents of the great path. Demonic chi circled around it, and it was filled with a mysterious aura. The throbbing beat came from inside the temple. It caused the hearts of the people to beat uncontrollably. At the foot of the black temple, across different areas, there were many demon emperors gathered. They were all looking at the huge demon god temple with stern expressions. Behind Futian, some renhuangs had come to a stop. It was difficult for them to continue. The terrifying throbbing could kill them silently. If the cultivators continued advancing even when they had reached their limits, they would most likely die from the shock. Among the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower, Bei Gong Shuang's footsteps were heavy. She said, "I cannot go on much further." It was not just her. A few renhuangs from the Wangshan Watchtower also felt the same. The demon emperors are in different locations. The demonic beasts have more vigor, so they can withstand this power better than we can, Futian said in a low voice. The group nodded in agreement. Demonic beasts indeed have extremely vigorous life force. Of course, many renhuangs with powerful cultivation could still push on. They were not as severely affected. Li Chongxing and Zhong Chan did not have any serious reactions to the power acting on them. Although their hearts throbbed and demonic chi also churned non-stop, their gazes were calm and unperturbed. Up ahead, a powerful demon swept a glance at the approaching crowd of humans. One of the demon emperors glanced over at other locations. In a cold tone he said, "These humans have come to check on the commotion. What should we do about them?" The other powerful demons looked in different directions. These demonic beasts seemed to be divided into different camps. There was a clear distinction between the groups. They clearly belonged to different clans. "Let's settle them off first," a powerful demon said. His tone was cold and indifferent, and contained murderous intent. "We are merely here to take a look around. Why do we need to?" A renhuang tried to reason with the demons. As he said this, he felt demonic chi surging towards him. It did not allow him to finish speaking. A demon emperor directly descended upon him like a shadow. Bang! There was a loud collision when their two figures came in contact. Before this, the renhuang who had spoken had extended his hand. Bloodstains could be seen. His palm had been ripped apart. These demonic beasts were actually attacking them straight up, many people thought to themselves. Although there were many demonic beasts in the dark mountain range, there were also a large number of renhuangs who had entered here. Many of them were from top forces. It was not easy for the demonic beasts to deal with them. "I will deal with them. Settle those people first," said the handsome youth in the fur coat that Futian's group encountered before this. He said this as he pointed in the direction of the members of Wangshan Watchtower. A powerful demon floated towards Futian's group. The strangely handsome youth swept a glance towards them. He said, "Before this, I recall warning all of you. This place is so big. Surely we are not disturbing anyone by coming here to take a look around?" Li Chongxing replied as he smiled back at the other party. He could sense that this handsome youth was a threat. This demon emperor seemed to appear younger and more handsome the older he got. He was certainly a super-powerful demon that had cultivated for eons. He changed his form to appear youthful, but in reality, he was an old monster. The demonic chi around them was frightening. Formless currents tore apart the space. The handsome youth swept towards the cultivators of the Wangshan Watchtower. He stepped out, and his figure disappeared without a trace the next moment. Buzz. His figure left behind afterimages. Li Chongxing sensed the danger and sent a palm strike flying out immediately. His palm strike seemed soft and gentle, yet even the space was twisted and vibrated under its force. Their two palms collided in an instant. The currents of the great path around them contorted frenziedly. What was even more terrifying was that an astonishing, consuming power suddenly burst forth in the vast space. It seemed to consume everything around them. A terrifying shadow appeared behind the handsome youth. Darkness descended, and rumbling sounds could be heard. Li Chongqing felt the aura of the Great Path in his body flow towards his opponent's palm uncontrollably. It was not just him. The auras of the Great Path of various cultivators behind him seemed to be sucked in by the consuming current. For a moment, there was an intense rumbling noise throughout the mountain range. The peaks trembled, and it seemed as though the heavens and earth were falling apart. "Stand down," said a silhouette as he walked forward. It was Zong Chan. Divine tablets appeared around his body. They blocked in front of him, lessening the effects of the intense, consuming power on the cultivators behind him. Rumble! The handsome demon emperor stepped onto the ground. The vast space seemed to be immediately consumed by him. Futian and the others retreated backward. At the same time, demon emperors attacked from other directions. In an instant, a large-scale battle erupted in the space. Futian and the group retreated. They saw gales ravaging their surroundings. Terrifying, powerful demons blocked out the sun in the sky. They charged towards the cultivators, intending to consume them. Zong Chan's figure shot up into the sky. Many powerful renhuangs began to attack. They never imagined that the demon emperors in the mountain range would attack so decisively. Futian's group retreated into the mountain range. "Let's go after him." Far off in other directions, the cultivators of two forces began to move. They were the cultivators of the great Yan ancient royal family, and the renhuangs of Lingxiao Palace. They had long marked Futian. Chapter 2048, Murderous Intent. The mountain range instantly descended into chaos. The cultivators from various forces were attacked by the demonic beasts one after another. Furthermore, the renhuangs who came from the outside world were not united. For instance, as the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower were retreating from the attacks of the demonic beasts, not only did Great Yan ancient royal family and Lingxiao Palace not help them out, but they instead targeted Futian's group. Their figures also chased after Futian's group in a flash, as though they might attack them at any time. "Let's go," suggested Goddess Donglai as she led the cultivators in retreating when she saw that the situation was off. They retreated toward the mountains. From another direction, another group of people passed by. They were the cultivators of Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow. When they saw this situation, they revealed strange expressions. What were these demonic beasts doing? Jiang Yueli glanced at the battlefield and then looked ahead. She continued forward, advancing further ahead. The cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower kept retreating backward. They unknowingly ended up in a valley region. Behind them, they were blocked off by a huge black mountain. The demon emperors charging towards them swept a glance at the various cultivators. They then immediately turned and left, returning to where they were before. This caused the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower to reveal bizarre looks. Were they leaving just like that? However, right then, the cultivators of two forces walked out. They were the cultivators from the great Yan ancient royal family, as well as Lingxiao Palace, who had been targeting Futian's group. When she saw this scene, Goddess Donglai's gaze turned extremely cold. She seemed to have thought of something. Why were these two forces targeting the Wangshan Watchtower as well as Futian? Even if Great Yan ancient royal family had its reason, why was Lingxiao Palace also doing so? Was it just because Futian won against Ling He and disgraced him? This reason seemed insufficient. Unless there was another reason behind it. "What are your intentions for doing this?" Zongchan said as he looked at the crowd of cultivators. Li Chongqing was not here, so he was naturally in charge. He also had the strongest ability among the group. They were attacked by demon emperors, and these two forces were eyeing them as well. To protect the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower, they had retreated again and again. Now, the demon emperors had left, but these two forces seemed to show murderous intent. "Before this, I have always wanted to experience the ability of the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower myself. Unfortunately, I never got the opportunity to do so. Now that there is no one to disturb us here in the secret zone, I cannot think of a better opportunity," said Yan Hanxing, the prince of Great Yan ancient royal family. He stepped forward and walked over to Zongchan. His ninth Tirahuang aura was terrifying. The winds and clouds in the sky above shifted. Frighteningly huge divine dragons appeared. A shadow of a huge dragon also appeared behind him. Dragon cries filled the skies. The song of the young dragon radiated outwards, tearing apart the land with its roar. Sound waves of the great path swept out. Zong Chan took a step forward. Divine tablets of the great path burst forth, suppressing everything. The power of the sound waves were mostly blocked off by the divine tablets. However, the terrifying sound vibrations still shook the people behind him. Many people groaned, and their faces turned pale. They felt as though their spiritual souls were about to be shattered. Some renhuangs were immediately sent flying backward, coughing up mouthfuls of fresh blood. Beigong Shuang also felt very uncomfortable. Blood oozed from the corners of her mouth. Her face was as pale as a sheet. Xia Qingyuan also let out a dull groan. Rumble. Zong Chan stepped forward, and countless divine tablets appeared around them. They hung from the heavens and were everywhere. He swept a glance at his opponent and formed seals with both his hands. The divine tablets immediately descended from the heavens and suppressed this part of the sky. Yan Hanxing had a serious expression. The cultivators also raised their heads and looked up into the sky. This attack seemed to be everywhere, suppressing this part of the sky and attacking all the cultivators at once. The divine dragon protected Yan Hanxing's body. However, many cultivators behind him were not so lucky. Their figures were instantly sent flying. At that moment, a figure with extraordinary temperament emerged from among the cultivators of Lingxiao Palace. The figure had ninth-tier cultivation. A gigantic Lingxiao pagoda appeared and floated in the sky. Endless golden divine light descended upon them, sweeping towards the various cultivators. When she saw this scene, Goddess Donglai took a step forward. Her figure became that of a towering divine tree. Its endless branches spread outwards and covered the sky and the sun. It protected all of the cultivators beneath it. All of you step back, Goddess Donglai ordered. The lineup of the two major forces was far stronger than they were. If a group battle were to erupt here, the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower would surely be at a disadvantage. Uncle Beigong Zifeng, help me take care of Qingyuan, Futian said to Beigong Ao and Zifeng via transmitted thoughts. With a flash of his silhouette, he then headed over in one direction alone. He sensed that many of their opponents were targeting him. His death was the greatest wish of Linghe, Yan Dongyang, and many other cultivators. Hence, he decided to draw their attention away from the others. As he said this, his silhouette flashed, and he headed to one side. There was a huge rumble, and a landslide occurred. He immediately tunneled through the ancient Black Mountain. As expected, when they saw Yi Futian leaving, many people gave pursuit. There were actually more than a dozen renhuangs heading in Yi Futian's direction. This made it clear how high a priority Yi Futian was for the two major forces. The deep Black Mountain was frenziedly collapsing and being destroyed. Yi Futian kept advancing at an astonishing speed. Beigong Ao had 8th-tier cultivation and had the Cloud Wood. Zifeng had a flawless great path and very powerful combat ability. They should be able to fend for themselves. Yi Futian drew many cultivators along with him when he went off on his own. This included powerful 8th-tier renhuangs. This way, they could even out the pressure on the battlefield. After a short while, Yi Futian traversed some distance through the mountain range. He came to a place surrounded by ancient black peaks. With a loud rumble, Yi Futian's figure collided with a terrifying, gigantic black mountain. He actually did not manage to bore through it. This gigantic black mountain was like a divine mountain. A mysterious aura radiated from it. It forcefully knocked Yi Futian back. Dozens of renhuangs chased after Yi Futian, rushing up to pressure him. They stood at different positions, gradually surrounding Yi Futian in this huge space. Yan Dongyang and Linghe were both here. Their eyes flared up with murderous intent. No matter how outstanding Yi Futian's talent was, he needed to die. He was the inheritor of Supreme Deity Donglai's teachings and also joined the Wangshan Watchtower to cultivate. He actually still dared to display such talents. There was no reason for him to live. Linghe extended his palm, and a divine tower flew out from his hand. It flew up into the sky and then grew larger and larger. It floated high in the sky and became a gigantic divine tower. The direct descendants of Lingxiao Palace possessed the Lingxiao Pagoda life spirit. This treasure was concocted from it. As the tower floated in the sky, frightening golden currents descended from it. The might of the great path also pressed down and completely sealed off the space. Golden currents covered the vast space, seemingly blocking out the sky and the sun. Futian raised his head and glanced around. When he sensed the might of the great path, his gaze turned cold and indifferent. Were they separating the space off so that it was more convenient for them to kill him? Are all of you going to ignore the words of Chief Ning? Futian asked in a cold tone. Were these two major forces ignoring the rules established by the overseer of the Donghua domain? The crowd looked at him with mocking looks. It was as though they were looking at a dead person. Ling He laughed and said, "If you die to the demonic beasts in the mountain range, what does that have to do with us?" Chapter 2049, Not Enough. Futian looked at Ling He. The other party did not shy away from admitting that they wanted him to die here. It was not just that. These people would certainly not hold back against the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower. They truly came with murderous intent. Were Great Yan ancient royal family and Lingxiao Palace really going to act so presumptuous after joining forces? In the heavens above, the tower floated in the sky. The dazzling shadow of the tower loomed over this part of the sky and suppressed it. It caused this part of the space to feel exceptionally heavy. Flowing lights of the great path immediately charged towards Futian. Futian's will shifted, and a brilliant divine sword instantly appeared before him. This divine sword contained terrifying sword wool as it went against the flow of light. It hovered above Futian's head. The currents of swordsmanship and the light of the tower collided, letting out an ear-piercing sound. "Attack!" ordered Ling He. His gaze was filled with intense murderous intent. He immediately gave the order for his subordinates to kill Futian. As he gave the order, an 8th Renhuang from Lingxiao Palace attacked. The 8th cultivator took a step forward. A long golden spear in his hand released brilliant divine light that directly pierced the sky. Buzz! The frightening Lingxi spear was astonishing. The spear was extremely fast, penetrating the very fabric of space. Futian's reaction time was also rapid, as he dodged it instantly. The spear swept past his figure. Before Futian could react again, another spear descended. The spear chased after its own shadow as the Lingxi spear seemed to merge with the great path. Futian felt the space in front of him being torn apart and shattered. The power of the great path was pierced through. A long spear similarly appeared in Futian's hand. Frightening battle intent circled it. Without any hesitation, he stabbed his spear straight out in front of him. He could not keep evading his opponent's spear techniques. He could only counter with his own attacks. The two long spears clashed. Futian's figure was immediately sent flying from the shockwave. Even though he had a flawless great path, he was still just a 4th Renhuang. He was facing an 8th Renhuang, and one from Lingxiao Palace who was proficient in Lingxi's spear techniques. Purely in terms of spear techniques, he was already at a disadvantage. The 8th cultivator did not continue to attack, instead looking at Futian with a serious expression. This person was actually also proficient in spear techniques. Frightening battle intent emanated from the long spear in Futian's hand. This battle intent circled and surged into his body. It caused Futian's battle intent to burst forth. His will was mighty. It was as though a spear god had possessed him. The will of the great path surrounded the body of the 8th cultivator. He stood there, becoming one with his spear. He gave off an ethereal vibe and had an extraordinary temperament. Futian stared at the other party. A divine tree seemed to appear in his body. Currents of the great path emanated outwards. The vast space seemed to be enveloped by these currents. At the same time, vigorous life force radiated from Futian's body. It caused his will and energy to reach their utmost limits. His battle intent seemed to burst forth from his body. On top of that, a frightening domain of the great path appeared behind him. The stars circled him, and countless stone tablets seemed to appear. There were runes carved on each tablet. Divine light of the Great Path shone, and the Buddhist voice of the Great Path could faintly be heard chanting the Vajra demon-slaying rhythm. The next moment, currents of the Great Path appeared above Futian's head. They consumed the power in the surroundings. A yin-yang diagram of the Great Path was created. This yin-yang diagram seemed to be connected to the divine tree, perfectly merging with it. Half of the diagram was as hot as the scorching sun, the other half as cold as the moon. The power of yin radiated from it. Sword light of catastrophe hung above. This space became extremely frightening. It caused even the 8th tier cultivator to feel pressured. Right now, Futian seemed very powerful to him. Even more powerful aura emanated from the Renhuang's figure. He merely stood there, but frightening currents of the Great Path emanated outwards. Countless shadows split from his figure. Each shadow contained a terrifying aura. They charged towards Futian. For a moment, the will of their spears was astonishing. The countless shadows advanced, appearing in different locations. They appeared to be everywhere. The next moment, the figure of the 8th tier Renhuang moved. He disappeared from his original position. Futian could not see where he had disappeared to. Buzz! In the heavens above, the yin-yang diagram released terrifying lights of catastrophe. They swept out across the space. At the same time, Futian stabbed out with his spear. The astonishing will of the spear radiated out, seemingly able to pierce the space. Bang! There was a loud sound, and a shadow appeared before Futian. The two spears clashed straight into each other. The shadow revealed a strange look, appearing to be caught off guard by this. Futian had actually pinpointed his position without fail. Not only that, but the Renhuang also felt that within this domain of the Great Path, his way was being restricted. For instance, the chill caused his movements to be slowed down. The body of the 8th tier Renhuang disappeared without a trace as though it was but one of his shadows. The next moment, another shadow suddenly emerged, and another frightening spear stabbed out to kill Futian. Its speed was so fast that Futian could not react to it. The stone tablets directly flew over. With loud rumbles, they frenziedly exploded and turned to dust. The light of catastrophe directly pierced the space. When Futian's spear appeared again, it landed straight on the tip of the Renhuang's spear. It was as though Futian could completely read his every movement. However, the powerful attack still caused the Great Path around Futian's body to crumble. His figure was sent flying outward. Next, countless spears continuously appeared in different locations. Each spear was like the brush of a deity. However, each spear was actually blocked by Futian. Each time Futian was sent flying, the Renhuang felt that Futian would certainly be unable to withstand the next spear. Yet he discovered that there was always another spear that Futian could block. What was even more frightening was that he discovered this place had become Futian's domain of the Great Path. The chill grew more and more intense, already beginning to invade his body and affect his speed. The light of catastrophe that descended from the sky also kept destroying his shadows. Not only was Futian not defeated, but the Renhuang instead was being gradually restricted. Something is off. The others also began to realize this. Currents of the Great Path also appeared around them. The currents were everywhere. The vast space seemed to be affected by Futian's currents of the Great Path. It appeared to have become his own domain of the Great Path. Do not dawdle any longer. Kill him, ordered Yen Dongyang as a cold look flashed past in his eyes. This time, their lineup was extremely powerful. They had 8 8th tier Renhuangs alone. Yen Dongyang and Ling He were considered the ones with the weakest cultivation among their lineup. Against such odds, it was difficult for Futian to escape them. No matter how talented he was, he would certainly perish. The others answered as they nodded their heads. They stepped forward, and immediately, astonishing auras of the Great Path burst forth from different directions simultaneously, sweeping towards Futian. At the same time, the yin-yang diagram in the sky above consumed the power of the Great Path around them. The light of catastrophe that descended in the form of swords. Everywhere they landed, everything was destroyed. Yen Dongyang and Ling He were similarly in the attack range. They frowned as they glared at Futian. Futian wielded the long spear in his hand. He stood against them alone. As he swept a glance towards them, he said, "With these people, it is still not enough." Chapter 2050, The Slaughter. Yen Dongyang and Ling He frowned. All of them were not enough? Be careful, someone reminded them. The yin-yang pattern that floated above their heads felt extremely dangerous. Psst! There was a sharp and terrifying sound. The destructive current of the great path from the yin-yang pattern attacked downward, keeping everyone in its grip. Yen Dongyang and Ling He were also caught up in the attack. Having felt that terrifying current of destruction, both of them released the divine wheel of great path. At the same time, there were also divine items that were blooming with brilliant radiance. Yen Dongyang seemed to be wrapped up in the form of the true dragon as a gigantic shadow of the dragon appeared. The falling currents of destruction were attacking it, making terrible sounds. Yen Dongyang found that the shadow of the dragon could not resist the coming attacks. An armor of golden dragon scale gradually attached itself to his body, which made him appear fierce and terrifying. His eyes were frightening to behold. When he first fought Futian at Wangshan Watchtower, he didn't have an accurate sense of his power. It wasn't until much later that he realized Futian had been hiding his true strength all along. Now he knew clearly that he and Futian were hardly at the same level, and that his opponent's combat effectiveness was at a totally different realm. Ling He fared no better, as he was busy fighting off the destructive currents of swordsmanship that fell from the void. By this time, other cultivators were taking actions as well. The three cultivators of the Eighth Realm unleashed the terrible power of the Great Path at the same time. Thousands of spear shadows appeared, and countless afterimages appeared in this part of the space. Lingxi's spear bloomed once again, and penetrated the void in a single strike. In another direction, a Lingxiao pagoda appeared on the mountain top above Futian's head. It was the divine wheel of Great Path from one of the cultivators of the Eighth Realm. The light of the divine wheel came crashing down. It flattened everything in its path and kept Futian in place. Behind Futian, a sacred giant dragon appeared, and the roar from the song of the young dragon shattered mountains and rivers. The sky and earth seemed to come apart as waves of sonic attacks swept through the area, directly attacking the spiritual soul. The sharp claws of the massive true dragon slammed down and torn apart that corner of the sky. Futian was attacked at the same time by three powerful cultivators of the Eighth Realm. That space of the Great Path was about to burst and shatter. There was simply no room to hide. Yen Dongyang and Ling He stared in that direction. Could Futian survive such a choreographed attack? The storm of destruction came with a vengeance. Both the spiritual soul and the physical body were crushed by the terrifying Great Path. It seemed completely unstoppable. The starry storm that surrounded Futian was broken up and destroyed. Although the attack of the swordsmanship was quite strong, it could not affect the blow from the opposing three cultivators. Life and death were only in a matter of instant. At this moment, an extreme chill swept out and shut down the space with ice. This slowed down all three cultivators' attack speed, and time seemed to come to a stop. At the same time, a terrifying sacred radiance bloomed from Futian. This sacred radiance contained the might of the Great Path, which melded into Futian's body as well as his fighting will. All three cultivators of the Eighth Realm felt a supreme pressure of might, as if this coercion was coming from an even higher level of existence. This moment seemed endless. Their attack could have arrived in an instant, but everything seemed to have slowed down. The attack that could have accomplished in an instant was delayed and did not fall as expected. However, they saw the divine light that lingered upon Futian. The fighting will of the long spears swept out and destroyed all power of the Great Path. Futian's body moved, and man and spear became one. When the spear was piercing forward, that cultivator of the Eighth Realm from Lingxiao Palace only felt that the Great Path madly collapsing and shattering. It seemed that it was not Futian he was facing, but some descendant of the gods who would not be denied. As the shadow of the spear passed through, the crowd saw countless golden fragments appeared in the wake of the spear, and that everything had turned into dust. Time seemed to stand still, and all the cultivators looked at that cultivator of the Eighth Realm from Lingxiao Palace. He stood there, motionless, with golden divine light surrounding his body, like a statue. In the next moment, that statue-like figure shattered into nothingness, turned into a cloud of golden dust, and disappeared. A cultivator of the 8th realm, obliterated just like that. Everyone else's face changed when they witnessed what had taken place. Not only that, but they also saw a magnificent imperial glory emitted from Yi Futian's body. It shot straight into the heavens. The imperial glory had been integrated into the fighting will of the spear, and made that fighting will a reality, materialized into terrifying aura of the spear. How is this possible? Ling He stared at Yi Futian, unable to believe what he was seeing before his eyes. Wasn't Yi Futian the chosen heir of Eastern Deity Island? How could he possess such terrifying power? Was that the imperial glory on his body? How could he embody the will of the great emperor? Was he really no more than just the chosen heir of Eastern Deity Island? Yan Dongyang's expression was equally comical. His eyes were glued on the scene playing out in front of him as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. A powerful existence of the 8th realm had just perished like that, felled with a single strike of the spear. Yi Futian paid no attention to any of them. The spear in his hand pointed forward, and the imperial glory on his body rushed straight into the sky. It was as if directly integrated into the yin-yang pattern so that the falling light of catastrophe also became golden. "Watch out!" people exclaimed as the light of catastrophe fell. A cultivator of the 7th realm was torn apart instantly. His body shattered into nothingness. The expression of the other cultivators changed drastically. Except for the 2 cultivators of the 8th realm, the rest of the people were retreating, releasing a terrifying current of the Great Path. However, Yi Futian was suspended in midair, and the yin-yang pattern kept expanding. The falling yin-yang light of catastrophe shattered and destroyed the Great Path. Under the light of catastrophe, all the cultivators were also shattered into nothingness. The screams continued. Except for the 2 cultivators of the 8th realm, no one else was able to resist this catastrophic light of destruction. Of course, Yan Dongyang and Ling He were still alive, but it was not because they had the ability to resist. They were still breathing because Yi Futian was not in a rush to kill them. At this moment, Yi Futian moved toward the 2 cultivators of the 8th realm. When the light of catastrophe came down, the 2 cultivators resisted with all their might. When they saw Yi Futian was coming toward them, their faces paled. Buzz! The yin-yang pattern directly shone on a cultivator of the 8th realm. As the 2 extreme powers of the moon and the sun descended, accompanied by an infinite catastrophic light of swordsmanship, that cultivator of the 8th realm released the Lingxiao pagoda on his body to the extreme to resist the attack. However, Yi Futian disappeared from where he stood in an instant. The long spear blasted upon the Lingxiao pagoda with a loud bang. Under the overwhelming fighting will, the pagoda of the divine will shattered and was destroyed. The light of catastrophe descended as that cultivator of the 8th realm screamed. But in the next moment, a long spear passed through his skull and ended his life. "Who are you?" the remaining cultivator of the 8th realm from the ancient royal family of Yan asked Yi Futian as his eyes fixed upon him. "The one who killed you." As soon as Yi Futian's voice faded away, the spear was unleashed. As the terrifying spear blasted on the sacred dragon, and cracks continued to appear on its body. At the same time, the light of catastrophe fell, tearing the dragon apart, and rushed into their defenses. There was another scream as the yin-yang catastrophe came down upon them. The body of the other shattered little by little, until it turned to dust. In a blink of an eye, an extremely powerful army of Renhuang was reduced to just Yan Dongyang and Ling He, who were still alive. All the others had perished. Yi Futian turned to face Yan Dongyang and Ling He. Finally, there was a strong sense of fear and dread in their eyes. Ling He looked at Yi Futian and said, "You can't kill us! You were killed by a demonic beast. How does that have anything to do with me?" Yi Futian responded coldly. "No," Ling He replied. "If we die here, everyone will know it's your doing. The Yan Kingdom, Lingxiao Palace, and even the domain chief's manor will not let you off the hook. When you were after me, didn't you ever consider the consequences?" The fighting will puffed out of the spear that was in Yi Futian's hand. Its murderous intent was burning hot. He had killed so many by this time that there was no difference if he killed these two or not. Ling He glanced in the direction where those people had disappeared and seemed to realize that Yi Futian no longer had any recourse. He said, "There is still a chance. As long as you let us go, all the grievances will be forgiven. The Yan Kingdom and Li Shao Palace will no longer pursue the matter. What say you?" "Pa!" The response was a strike from Yi Futian's spear, piercing his throat. Ling He stared at the man in front of him, an extremely painful expression in his eyes. He couldn't believe this was true, that he would be killed just like this. The spear spun slightly, and Ling He's body immediately shattered and turned to dust. It was as if he had never existed in the first place. Yan Dongyang's eyes fixed on Yi Futian, and a great sense of fear struck him. He seemed to have a premonition of his fate. Ling He had been exterminated, and the other would not let him get away with it. He had no escape. "You will be with us soon enough," Yan Dongyang said to Yi Futian. His tone was extremely confident. It was as if he had foreseen the end of Yi Futian. "You won't see it anyway," Yi Futian replied. As his voice faded, the light of catastrophe fell. Under that light of catastrophe, Yan Dongyang uttered a terrible cry as his body was torn apart, turning little by little into nothingness. All the cultivators had been killed. Chapter 2051, The One Behind the Scenes. After Yi Futian had slaughtered all the cultivators, he retracted the imperial glory, which should not be exposed in front of the others. He raised his hand to take away the pagoda that had sealed off this space in the void. The aftershocks of the great path still lingered. He did not leave but stood there in a daze. His brows were knitted tightly, like he had thought of something awful. Yi Futian had a strong sense of foreboding. This was not because he had just killed the cultivators from the ancient royal family of Yan and Ling Shao Palace. Strictly speaking, they had violated the rules first and forced him to fight back because he had no other choice. What really disturbed him was this whole series of events. It seemed that they could all be linked together. However, if they were to be linked together, they inevitably pointed toward the speculation that would upend all his plans. Worse yet, he may also be facing the calamity between life and death, possibly perishing in the Donghua heavens. Just as Yi Futian was deep in thought, a powerful aura suddenly came from the distant void. He raised his head and saw a group of people descending on him. The man in the lead had divine light shining all over him, possessing an unparalleled temperament. When Yi Futian saw the appearance of this man, his uneasiness became stronger. It was as if his suspicion was getting closer to becoming the truth. Although he was guessing, he had hoped that he was wrong. Once it had been proven to be right, the consequences would be unimaginable. But things seemed to be moving in the worst possible direction. The man that appeared was the #1 genius talent of the Donghua heavens, the proud son of the chief of the Donghua domain chief's manor, Ninghua. The person behind him was the cultivator from domain chief's manor who had entered the secret zone with him. Ninghua looked down at Yi Futian as his eyes surveyed the area below. His sight swept toward the broken ground and those corpses. His face suddenly became extremely cold, full of murderous intent. Yi Futian didn't explain anything but merely looked up at Ninghua. Ninghua stared at him as he stepped forward. The light of the grand seal of the great path was shining, and traces of divine glory of the seal enveloped this boundless space. The way of the seal was hidden inside his eyes and directly rushed into Yi Futian's eyes. Yi Futian suddenly felt that all the will of the great path was sealed shut, and the same with the great path that surrounded him. At this moment, Yi Futian felt the gap. Even though they both possessed a perfect great path, his opponent was an upper Renhuang of the 7th realm at his peak while he was just a Renhuang 4th realm. The gap between them was not insubstantial. Moreover, Ninghua himself was a genius known as the #1 figure in the Donghua domain. Such a gap was difficult to address. Yi Futian had killed more than a dozen powerful cultivators before, but he knew he had no chance against Ninghua. Above Ninghua, a divine picture of a seal hung high in the sky as the divine light of the great path spilled down upon Yi Futian. At the same time, Ninghua raised his palm and dealt a single blow. This blow shook the void with a violent tremor, and endless palm strikes seemed to overlap, turning into countless patterns of the great path that attacked in unison. Silently, Ninghua directly launched the attack. The long spear in Yi Futian's hand puffed out terrible fighting will as the spear lanced forward. However, the radiant pattern of the great path swept through his body, and the power of the long spear, as well as the power inside of Yi Futian, seemed to be sealed instantaneously. Multiple hits from the palm strike landed at the same time. Even the aurora of the spear was annihilated. Bang! Yi Futian's body was knocked back and hit the black mountain wall fiercely, causing the entire side of the mountain to vibrate violently. Sure enough, without any words or questions, he had resort to a strict defense. Yi Futian was obvious on Ninghua's stance, and it also confirmed his suspicion. Suddenly, he felt a coldness all over. It turned out that what he had always wanted to do was a huge mistake in itself. He was walking into the abyss step by step, all by himself. While in the trial at the secret zone, you slaughtered people from all forces also there for the trial. You should die, Ninghua said with a cold tone. He stood in the void and looked down at Yi Futian. There was contempt in those arrogant eyes. Even though Yi Futian had extraordinary talents, he still had just one thing to say. That was he should be executed. He wanted Yi Futian dead. As soon as his voice fell, all the cultivators behind him immediately moved forward and headed toward Yi Futian. Ninghua didn't need to take action himself. They would take care of Yi Futian and ensure his demise. The terrible aura of the great path descended, and Yi Futian looked bad. His eyes were staring coldly at those cultivators who were approaching him. Stop! At this moment, there was a great shout. In the distance, with the speed of the wind, the aura of the great path descended. Several people were rushing over with extreme speed. It was Li Changxing, Zhong Chan, and the others who had extricated themselves from the battles on the other side. Vice Chief, what is the meaning of this? Li Changxing said from midair. When his voice fell, he was already at Yi Futian's side, looking at Ninghua and the cultivators from the domain chief's manor. My father has already said that in the secret zone, there must be no killing. However, Yi Futian has slaughtered all the Renhuang. You may report to the Millet Emperor that this man belongs to the domain chief's manor. Ninghua spoke with total authority. He had no intention to spare Yi Futian's life. Brothers, Yi Futian transmitted his voice to Li Changxing and Zhong Chan. Is there any way to tell the Millet Emperor that there is a problem with the chief? When Li Changxing and Zhong Chan heard Yi Futian's voice transmission, their hearts trembled. They were no fools, and when they heard what Yi Futian had to say, a bold possibility came to them suddenly. It made their hearts skip a beat. Was that the problem? This was precisely the reason why Yi Futian felt hopeless. He chose to come to the domain chief's manor to participate in the Donghua banquet, displaying his superior strength and talent, and entered the secret zone for trial. All these efforts were so that he could enter the domain chief's manor with absolute dominance to cultivate. Then, what could the ancient royal family of Yan and Lishao Palace possibly do to him? However, he realized now that he was dead wrong. Neither force, the ancient royal family of Yan or Lishao Palace, had the slightest scruples about killing him. Why was that? They had set their sights on him from the very beginning. Clearly, they had this intention before entering the secret zone. It was not something that just happened by chance. The Donghua banquet was taking place here, and the chief was just outside. Was demonic beast a plausible excuse? Surely the chief was not so naive as to believe it. Since it was not plausible, why did the others dare to do what they did? Remembering Ling He's aggression and confidence, and Yan Dongyang's last words, coupled with the action of the palace lord of Ling Shao Palace at the banquet, a thought started to form inside Yi Futian's mind. Even before that, the Ling Shao Palace had pledged itself to the chief. They might have been doing the bidding of the chief. Before, when Ling He was courting Qin Qing, the goddess of fluttering snow palace, it was also in the effort to link these top forces to form a net of power. Ling He and Qin Qing, Ninghua and Taihua goddess. The more he thought about it, the more alarmed he became. The chief of Donghua domain was the one ruling things behind the scenes. Chapter 2052, Lurking Perils. Yi Futian also remembered something else. The Millet Emperor had asked him if Supreme Deity Donglai had any memory of the last battle. Moreover, if Supreme Deity Donglai still retained some memory of it, why didn't he pass them on to Goddess Donglai? Nor did he tell her the details of that last battle. The Millet Emperor and outsiders knew that Supreme Deity Donglai still had some residual memories of the battle. Now Yi Futian understood that it was because Supreme Deity Donglai didn't want to implicate Goddess Donglai and the rest of Eastern Deity Island, as well as the Millet Emperor. If they knew the truth, disaster might ensue. According to Goddess Donglai, the death of Supreme Deity Donglai caused the conflict between the Millet Emperor and the ancient royal family of Yen. The chief came forward to mediate the matter and ruled that the Millet Emperor could not involve himself further with Eastern Deity Island. Based on that ruling, the ancient royal family of Yen dropped the matter with Eastern Deity Island. At the same time, Eastern Deity Island stopped its involvement with the outside world, so peace was restored. Although the ancient royal family of Yen and Wangshan Watchtower had grudges, they were able to maintain a semblance of peace, and the Donghua domain remained orderly. However, now Yi Futian truly comprehended that the death of Supreme Deity Donglai not only involved the ancient royal family of Yen and Lishao Palace, but it was also very possible that the domain chief's manor was behind the whole thing. This was the reason why when they were at Turtle Deity Island, in front of the chief, Lingxiao Palace did not hesitate to get between the grudge match between the ancient royal family of Yen and Wangshan Watchtower. After that, the two sides had always worked together in their dealings with Wangshan Watchtower. After they entered the secret zone, they had flouted the rules set by the chief and directly moved against them with bad intentions. After giving the matter considerable thought, everything suddenly became clear. The chief of the Donghua Domain Chief's manor was the true power backing the ancient royal family of Yen and Lingxiao Palace. Because of this, they had no qualms about killing them here as they please, intending on killing him and all the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower in one fell swoop. They didn't need to worry that the chief would punish them. The chief was one behind the scenes. Why would he punish them? Of course, Yi Futian suspected that he might be the fuse. His talent had alarmed many. Otherwise, everything may remain the same as it was before. For the sake of maintaining order in the Donghua domain, Chief Ning could do nothing against them. It wouldn't really threaten them anyway. His existence had motivated many with the worst of intentions. Okay, Li Changxing replied quickly. Clearly, he had a way to get in touch with the Millet Emperor. He had traded transmission treasures back when he was at Penglai Deity Island. Other top figures may also have transmission items at their disposal. When he heard Yi Futian's voice transmission, Li Changxing understood that this matter was of grave importance and would likely affect the entire Wangshan Watchtower. Even his master, the Millet Emperor, would not be spared. Before, the master was only hypothesizing that Lishao Palace may have participated. Still, no one could have thought that the person behind it all was the helmsman of Donghua Domain, Chief Ning. As a result, the entire Wangshan Watchtower was now in the same precarious situation as Eastern Deity Island once was. At the domain chief's manor, the clouds and mist surrounded the place with the divine aura. Inside Donghua Palace, a group of top masters was still there. They drank while looking down at a mountain below, which would be the exit of the secret zone. Those who entered the Fuyao secret zone would eventually emerge after they had run through its course. The group chatted casually, talking and laughing, discussing who would be the first cultivator to get out of the secret zone. At this point, the palace lord of Lishao Palace, who was talking and laughing, suddenly turned pale. His face became extremely gloomy, and a terrible aura spread from him. It caused the entire Donghua Palace to quiet instantly. Everyone looked at Ling Yunzi, the palace lord of Lishao Palace. Someone asked, "What's happening?" Chief Ning also looked at Ling Yunzi and asked, "What is it?" Ling Yunzi showed a pained look in his eyes, clenching his fists. He said, "Something has happened to Ling He." Chief Ning's expression changed slightly. Everyone within the Donghua Palace had different looks on their faces, but they were all wondering, did Ling He perish in the secret zone? Although there was some danger in the secret zone, Ning Hua and the others from the domain chief's manor were with him, as well. Theoretically speaking, someone with Ling He's status ought to be fine. However, at this moment, Ling Yunzi suggested that something had happened to Ling He. While Ling He was in the secret zone, no one outside would know what happened inside. Ling Yunzi would only get a sense of foreboding if Ling He were dead. Clink! The sound of broken wine glass was heard. Before anyone understood what happened, they looked in the direction of the sound. It was Emperor Yan. Emperor Yan's face had a horrible look on it as the wine glass shattered in his palm and turned into dust. The wine spilling on the table. His eyes were a little hollow as he looked in the direction of Chief Ning. He whispered, "Dongyang! Yan Dongyang!" Everyone trembled in their hearts. What was going on? Ling He and Yan Dongyang, two genius talents from two major principalities, descendants of prominent heritage, coupled with strong cultivation and outstanding talents. How could both of them have died? Furthermore, didn't they bring Top Ren Wang with them? For a moment, Donghua Palace was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. There was also a slight sense of suppression. Did they encounter danger in the secret zone? Emperor, she whispered, breaking the silence inside the Donghua Palace. Chief Ning glanced around and offered, "You both have our condolences." The Millet Emperor sat quietly. He faintly felt that an aura from Emperor Yan and Ling Yunzi falling on him. He frowned and wondered, could this have anything to do with Wangshan Watchtower? But everyone was in the secret zone, so no one knew exactly what was happening. Unless they had planned this ahead of time. Without thinking more about the matter, his heart trembled suddenly. His eyes sharpened slightly when he received a message, and he was stunned for just a second. The Millet Emperor controlled his own emotions so that there was no fluctuation in his own aura. As if everything was business as usual, he lowered his head and took a sip from the wine glass, but there was a great disturbance in his heart. Could it be Domain Chief's manor of Donghua Domain? The Millet Emperor was a little bewildered before, but everything became clear when he received this message. He now understood everything. However, he could not afford to reveal this knowledge. "Chief, it suddenly occurred to me that I have something that needs handling. I need to leave for a few moments." Millet Emperor controlled his emotions and raised his glass to Chief Ning. Chief Ning looked at the Millet Emperor with a strange look in his eyes but asked softly, "It's not easy for us to get together. What's so important?" "A private matter," the Millet Emperor responded, and Chief Ning nodded slightly, not revealing whether or not he had any doubts. On the surface, everything seemed to be just fine. "What does the Millet Emperor mean by this?" Ling Yunzi said suddenly, his voice icy. Emperor Yan also looked at him with a cold expression. These two major cultivators both dropped their aura faintly on the Millet Emperor. "I don't understand the meaning of your words," said the Millet Emperor with a frown. "Lingxiao Palace and the Yan Kingdom happen to have some grievances with Wangshan Watchtower. And now, something has happened to Ling He and Yan Dongyang. What does the Millet Emperor know?" Ling Yunzi said coldly. "The Millet Emperor ordered the hit?" Emperor Yan interrogated unceremoniously without any further pretenses. "Are you kidding me?" Likewise, the Millet Emperor released wisps of pressure from his body. "The chief set the rules regarding this trip to the secret zone. Would I be so foolish as to let the people of Wangshan Watchtower violate them? Besides, you two were full of confidence before, specifically targeting the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower. How dare you attribute the cause of any mishaps to me now? When did Wangshan Watchtower become so worthy in your eyes? Do you think that your cultivators are somehow inferior to my disciple inside the secret zone? Or do the two of you know something that made you suspect Wangshan Watchtower in the first place?" The Millet Emperor's questioning silenced everyone for a while. The thunder-punishing Skylord said, "Before, it was always Lingxiao Palace and the Yan Kingdom that took the initiative. Even inside the secret zone, the Millet Emperor would not be so bold as to authorize Wangshan Watchtower to make enemies of two great principalities. Not to mention, it would violate the rules set by the chief. This is indeed unreasonable." Ling Yunzi and Emperor Yan looked at the thunder-punishing Skylord with indifference. They knew what orders they had given, so they had a pretty good idea of what might have happened. Their estimation would not be too far off. Otherwise, they couldn't figure out who gave the order. However, some things could not be said openly. He couldn't very well admit that they had ordered the people from the two great principalities to assassinate Wanshan Watchtower and Yi Futian. The Millet Emperor picking this juncture to leave is too much of a coincidence. If the Millet Emperor thinks that this has nothing to do with Wanshan Watchtower, why not stay? Said the Palace Lord of Lingxiao Palace coldly. Ling Yunzi, you mean to suggest that I gave this kind of order and now I'm going to abandon the disciples of Wanshan Watchtower and get myself out of here? The Millet Emperor's eyes were now sharp and unforgiving as he questioned Ling Yunzi. This line of logic was in itself contradictory and absurd. As soon as he finished speaking, the Millet Emperor stood up and said, "If I want to leave, are you going to stop me?" Then, the pressure from his body was released. Instantly, this space became extremely suppressed. The aura of the great path from these three men collided with each other, causing a gust of wind to blow within Donghua Palace. A dead silence. Everyone else was watching quietly. No one spoke. This kind of conflict would not be participated by other forces. It was enough for them to wait and see. No need to argue. We will get to the bottom of this. I can understand your feelings, but it is best to wait for them to come out. At this time, Chief Ning said, "If the Millet Emperor has something else to handle, please go and take care of it." The Millet Emperor looked at Chief Ning deeply. Judging from Chief Ning's strength and status, everything must be under his control, but so was he. The disciples of Wanshan Watchtower were still in the secret zone. What else could he do? Suppressing the thoughts in his head, the Millet Emperor nodded slightly and said, "Thank you, Chief." With that, he turned to step into the void and disappeared. Watching his departing figure, Emperor Yan and Ling Yunzi's both appeared extremely gloomy. The Millet Emperor must have gotten some news. Chapter 2053, Domineering Ninghua. After the Millet Emperor left, it felt quiet inside the Donghua Palace. The various giant-level figures had different expressions, but they did not say anything. Ling Yunzi and Emperor Yan still had sullen expressions. A cold aura emanated from their bodies. Although they had many descendants, be it Ling He or Yan Dongyang, they were both the most outstanding among their heirs. It was especially so for Ling He. He was the successor chosen by Ling Yunzi and was to be the future master of Lingxiao Palace. Yet he had perished within the secret zone. However, no matter how Ling Yunzi tried, he could not fathom how Ling He had died. Just as the Millet Emperor had said, the two top forces held an absolute advantage against Wanshan Watchtower no matter how they looked at it. How is it that two of their core members ended up being killed? This meant that many other Renhuangs had also perished. Ling Yunzi said, "Chief, our Lingxiao Palace and Great Yan ancient royal family could not see eye to eye with Wanshan Watchtower. They might have come into conflict in the secret zone. However, the chief has already established the rule that the cultivators of the Donghua domain have come here to train and should not kill each other. After they emerge, if it is found that Ling He and Yan Dongyang have been assassinated by others, I hope that the chief can hand the culprits over to us so that we can deal with them." He suppressed the murderous intent and rage in his heart. He tried to keep his voice calm. As giant-level figures, very few things could cause their hearts to be stirred. However, it was not the case this time. Their descendants had perished. "All right," Chief Ning answered as he nodded his head. "During the Donghua banquet, before everyone entered the secret zone, I established the rule that there should be no manslaughter. If Ling He and Yan Dongyang indeed perished in the secret zone, not because of their adventures inside but by the hands of Renhuangs of the Donghua domain, I will certainly make sure justice is upheld." "Many thanks, Chief," said Ling Yunzi as he nodded his head. They clearly knew what had happened. This was merely them laying the foundations for later. If their heirs had truly been killed by the disciples of Wanshan Watchtower, then the members of Wanshan Watchtower would soon join the deceased. As for the Millet Emperor, since the disciples of Wanshan Watchtower were all here, he could not walk away on his own. They did not believe that the Millet Emperor would just desert them. If someone else made a move first, but instead, the thunder-punishing Skylord uttered in a low voice. Two sharp glares instantly turned towards him. They were the gazes of Emperor Yan and Ling Yunzi. This scene caused the thunder-punishing Skylord to pause. He then shook his head, smiled bitterly and said, "I am not implying anything else. It is just that the Renhuangs all entered the secret zone. It is inevitable for them to encounter extenuating circumstances. Once conflict arises and they begin to exchange blows, they won't keep everything under control. If someone else attacks them first, should or shouldn't the other party counterattack? How can you control that? If someone else tries to kill the other party, how should the situation be handled?" Emperor Yan and Ling Yunzi both released cold auras. Although the thunder-punishing Skylord claimed that he was not implying anything, he was clearly directing his speculation at them. However, the thunder-punishing Skylord was also not that concerned about their gazes. Once one reached their level of cultivation, they would do as they pleased. He had a good impression of Futian. Before this, on Turtle Deity Island, the two forces had previously joined forces to go against the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower. If Ling He and Yan Dongyang had truly been killed by the members of Wangshan Watchtower, it might be that Ling He's side had instigated the fight. If they were to still condemn the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower, then that would not be just. The other party wanted to lay the foundations for their argument later, so he also spoke up to see how Chief Ning would handle the situation. Chief Ning also hesitated for a moment when he heard what the thunder-punishing Skylord said. He revealed a pensive look. Such a question was not so easy to answer. "Speculating now is meaningless," Chief Ning declared. "Ninghua is also in the secret zone. We still do not know what exactly happened. Once everything is over and they have emerged from the secret zone, everything will be clear. We can decide how to handle this then." Since the chief said so, thunder-punishing Skylord did not go on. He smiled and did not say anything. He was also curious as to what had happened in the secret zone. Although the other giant-level figures also had their own thoughts about the matter, they did not reveal them. It was better to see how things played out later. At that moment, in the secret zone, two groups of cultivators stood facing each other. Aside from the cultivators of Great Yan Ancient Royal Family and Leishao Palace, the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower, as well as the Domain Chief's Manor, were also present. Ninghua swept an extremely sharp gaze towards Futian. Standing not far behind Ninghua, Yan Hanxing had an even colder look. His murderous intent was frightening. "Vice Chief, the members of the Yan Kingdom and Leishao Palace attacked us first. Young brother Yi was forced to defend himself," Li Changxing said to Ninghua. He had already secretly informed the Millet Emperor. However, he had come into dispute with Ninghua over this matter. Hence, he controlled his emotions as he tried to talk it out with Ninghua. Right now, no matter how enraged he was, he had to hold it in. He had first to settle the issue with Ninghua. At the very least, the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower had to make it out of there alive for there to be any hope of survival for them. "Vice Chief, Yi Lionian defied the rules set by Chief and killed the members of our Yan Kingdom. He should be sentenced to death," accused Yan Hanxing in a cold tone as he took a step out. Dragon cries shook the space. The divine dragons roared and churned as they charged ahead. Li Changxing also took a step out. The powerful aura of the Great Path emanated from his body and blocked off Yan Hanxing's path. The cultivators of Leishao Palace also stepped forward to attack. However, they were held off by Goddess Donglai. Yu Lionian killed those who entered the secret zone for training. Regardless of why he did so, we will take him into custody first. No one shall get in our way, Ninghua said. His tone was overbearing. Immediately, the Domain Chief's Manor cultivators to his left and right stepped out. Terrifying currents of the Great Path swept over the space with frightening pressure. The pressure immediately pressed down on Futian. However, at that moment, a heavenly might of the Great Path appeared in the vast space. Countless stone tablets appeared around them, enveloping the space. It completely covered Futian, shielding him. The divine tablets circled around and released enormous pressure. They burst forth like the heavenly might of the Great Path. There was a loud rumbling, and the great path shattered. Zhong Chan's figure stood there, holding off the cultivators of Domain Chief's manor. Vice Chief, shouldn't you investigate the truth of the matter before drawing conclusions? Zhong Chan asked. Although everyone here already knew who the mastermind was, it had not been publicly revealed yet. As the Vice Chief of the Domain Chief's manor, Ning Hua still had his reservations. However, the deaths of Ling He and the others coincidentally gave Ning Hua an excuse to act. After we take him into custody, we will naturally get to the bottom of this issue, Ning Hua said as he swept a glance at Zhong Chan. I said, no one shall get in our way. Ning Hua looked at the countless divine tablets that Zhong Chan released as he took a step forward. Zhong Chan was one of the four most prominent figures in the Donghua domain. He was an upper-level Renhuang with a flawless great path. Ning Hua wanted to see how long Zhong Chan could last against him. Ning Hua personally stepped out. Divine light of the great path circled him. He was insufferably arrogant. In an instant, countless ancient characters of the great path roared out and covered the sky. These characters were all characters for seal. In an instant they were everywhere in the vast space, suddenly turning it into his absolute domain. He sealed off the space. Even the power of the divine tablets was similarly sealed away. Chapter 2054 Insufferable Arrogance. Ning Hua and Zhong Chan were both powerful. Both of them had flawless seventh-tier great paths. The power of the great path burst forth from both of them. Divine light circled the vast space. Endless divine light of the seals enveloped the space. In the sky above, a god seal pattern appeared. It poured down like a heavenly river as it churned towards Zhong Chan. With Zhong Chan at the center, countless divine tablets circled him. The endless space seemed to be enveloped by the stone tablets. Rumble. The divine tablets descended upon different locations in the space, suppressing this part of the sky. It caused the space to be filled with an unparalleled great path of suppression. In the sky above, a heavenly tablet appeared. It seemed ancient, and the heavenly might of the great path emanated from it. It plunged downwards towards Ning Hua. The world around them rumbled. The great path around them stretched out far and wide. The heavenly tablet plummeted down and suppressed the space. It seemed as though no one could block it. However, Ning Hua, who was surrounded by divine light, did not bat an eyelid. He had a proud look on his face. He seemed to look down on everything. He swept a glance at the heavenly tablet of the great path falling towards him. He extended his arm, and endless divine light of the seals surrounded him. It was as though countless sealing runes were dancing around his palm. The next moment, Ning Hua took a step forward and immediately walked towards the heavenly tablet plummeting towards him. He raised a finger and pointed it at the sky. There were a series of spells known as God Seal spells. He was using the God Seal spell known as God Seal Finger. Its might was unfathomable. Once the God Seal Finger was unleashed, the endless divine light of the seals radiated outwards, sweeping towards the oncoming heavenly tablet. As the finger landed, the space trembled violently. The heavenly tablet also shook vigorously. It stopped advancing. It was as though the space it was in had been completely sealed. Loud rumbles could be heard. The heavenly tablet vibrated intensely. Endless divine light rained down, forming the power of suppression that pressed down on Ning Hua. Alas, the area around Ning Hua's body had become an absolute sealed domain. It was impregnable. When Zhong Chan saw this, he formed seals with his hands. The countless divine tablets around them shook and were then detached from the ground. They circled the space and charged towards Ning Hua. Ning Hua swept a glance at these divine tablets. He had a proud look of indifference. He stepped up into the air. Divine might emanated from him as his body became a divine body of the great path. Everywhere he passed by, the great path was sealed. He twirled his hands and then sent out a palm strike straight ahead. Countless sealing runes flew out. Each rune contained the might of the great path and suppressed this space. Set! Ning Hua uttered this single word. Right after he said this, a gigantic rune landed on a stone tablet. The stone tablet was immediately frozen in its spot. Although the light of the great path still circled the tablet, it could not break free. The rune was printed on its surface, sealing off the space. As countless runes flew out, the surrounding stone tablets all stopped in their tracks. Even though their divine light filled the sky, they still could not budge at all. The entire sky seemed to become a single piece. The absolute sealed domain was completely under Ninghua's control. Power of the Great Path radiated from Zhongchan's body, but he still could not shake off the runes. Zhongchan understood that his divine wheel of the Great Path was still inferior to Ninghua's. Before this, during the assessment in Donghua Academy, he had a 5th-tier divine wheel, whereas Ninghua could cause the divine mirror of heavenly wheels to show 6 divine lights. Only Yifutian's divine will might have a chance to compete with Ninghua's. However, Yifutian's cultivation plane was far inferior to Ninghua's. Hence, they could not be compared against each other. They were not even on the same level. Ninghua looked at Zhongchan. They locked gazes across the space. Frightening currents of the Great Path immediately clashed between them. Zhongchan felt unparalleled might emanating from Ninghua's pupils. Ninghua looked down on the world, and his might reigned over all. No one could prevent him from invading their wills. Frightening divine light of the seals invaded Zhongchan's pupils and seeped into his mind and will. This caused Zhongchan to be greatly affected. Then, a voice called out, "You have a flawless Great Path, and your ability is not bad. However, you are still unqualified to get in my way," said the voice with domineering authority. It was insufferably arrogant. As the voice said this, Ninghua pointed a finger at the sky. As the finger landed, Zhongchan saw the finger grow infinitely larger. It immediately invaded his mind and will. It then landed on his body. Bang! There was a huge sound. The god's seal finger was an extremely powerful attack. It caused Zhongchan to let out a dull groan. His great path collapsed, and his figure was sent directly flying outward. A bloody hole appeared on his body. The qi in his body was being frenziedly suppressed. His face was pale as he glanced at Ninghua from afar. Ninghua stepped into the air, still appearing insufferably arrogant as he glanced back at Zhongchan contemptuously. Zhongchan recalled how the members of the Donghua domain rated the 4 most prominent figures. Ninghua occupied his own level, while the other 3 were another level below. Who could stand against him? Ninghua was the top monstrous figure in the Donghua domain. At that moment, Zhongchan began to realize that Chief Ning was extremely ambitious. He was mandated to be the domain chief of the Donghua domain. However, he seemed unwilling to settle and was not satisfied with his current standing. He wanted to secure his grip over the entire Donghua domain. When Ninghua reached his peak in the future, there would be 2 extremely powerful figures. When the time came, there would be figures that stood at the very top of, not just the Donghua domain, but the entire divine prefecture. After he swept a glance at Zhongchan, Ninghua looked towards Futian. Although the Donghua heavens was said to have 4 top prominent figures, Ninghua did not take the others too seriously. Be it Desolation or Zhongchan, he did not see any one of them as a match for him. His equals were in the other domains of the divine prefecture, not in the Donghua domain. He was currently the top monstrous figure in the Donghua domain. In the future, he would be the leader of the Donghua domain. You have defied the rules and committed manslaughter in the secret zone. I will seal your cultivation and take you into custody while your sentence is pending, declared Ninghua as he looked at Futian. His tone was cold and arrogant. He was extremely overbearing. In the distance, many cultivators were approaching them. However, Ninghua ignored them and ordered, "Take him into custody." As he said this, cultivators from the domain chief's manor emerged again and approached Futian. Futian turned to look at the cultivators from the domain chief's manor walking up to him. He had an extremely ugly expression. He had offended Great Yan ancient royal family and Leishao Palace. He had participated in the Donghua banquet to join domain chief's manor. By doing so, the divine prefecture would be his place of respite, and Leishao Palace, as well as Great Yan ancient royal family, would not be able to touch him. However, how could he have imagined that the place he wanted to join was the force behind all this? The domain chief's manner was the true mastermind behind the scenes. Wouldn't he be walking into a trap if he joined them? Ninghua's ability was powerful. No one could stand against him. There were also top figures from the other two forces. Futian would not be able to escape at all. Once he was taken into custody, one could imagine the consequences. Since the mastermind was the domain chief, they would not let him go easily. After all, he was the true inheritor of Supreme Deity Donglai's teachings. Follow me. At that moment, a voice whispered in Futian's ear. As the voice said this, a blinding light shot out. Many people could not keep their eyes open. The cultivators from the domain chief's manor who were walking towards Futian also closed their eyes slightly as the bright light shone on them. When they opened their eyes, Futian's body had already disappeared without a trace. A beam of light appeared in the distance. Presumptuous! Ninghua yelled. His will swept towards the beam of light. With a single step, he traversed across the space. He raised his hand and grabbed the air. Divine light of the seals immediately enveloped the vast space as he grabbed out into the distance. As he clenched his palm, the space was sealed off. However, in the distance, only a beam of light was left behind, but there was no sign of any figures. They had escaped so quickly? Many people thought to themselves in astonishment. They used a ritual implement. Someone said. The other party used a ritual implement. Otherwise, they would have been unable to utilize such speed. They already knew who had taken Futian away. He was previously a legendary figure in the Donghua domain. Not long ago, he had lost to Futian during the Donghua banquet. He did not want to join Donghua Academy or the domain chief's manor. He was Chinese. In the mountain range, wills were blocked off. The beam of light traversed through the mountain range and was quickly hard to catch as Ninghua did not know where it went. This caused Ninghua's gaze to turn extremely cold. He glanced at the other cultivators of the Wangshan watchtower as a cold aura emanated from his gaze. Yi Liunian defied the rules and committed murder in the secret zone. Not only have all of you not helped maintain order, but you also aided him in escaping. How should we deal with you? Ninghua said in a cold tone as he glanced over the cultivators of Wangshan watchtower. His voice was still overbearing. Li Changxing, Zongchan, and the others felt that, to Ninghua, no one else was his equal. He did not take any cultivator from the various forces of the Donghua domain seriously. Vice Chief, you did not investigate the truth of the matter before attempting to take him into custody. If that is how you do things, you can do whatever you want. Li Changxing mocked. As expected, Ninghua was preparing to also act against the cultivators of Wangshan watchtower. Vice Chief, since we are in the secret zone, no one, be it Yi Liunian or the cultivators of Wangshan watchtower, can escape from here. After we leave this place, we will meet the chief as well as the various forces. Why don't we wait for chief to determine how to handle this issue then? A voice nearby suggested this. Ninghua turned to look at the person who had spoken. It was Goddess Jian Yueli of the Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow. Jian Yueli naturally also felt that something was strange about this matter. Before this, when they passed by, they saw the cultivators from the Wangshan watchtower being pursued. The other party had been relentless in their pursuit but appeared to have been killed instead. The cultivators of Domain Chief's manor, led by Ninghua, immediately took action on the members of Wangshan watchtower. She felt that this was strange. The truth of the matter probably still needed to be investigated. Hence, she had spoken up. They should leave it to the chief to decide after they left this place. Jian Yueli did not ponder too much about the issue. She naturally did not know that the chief was the true mastermind behind the scenes. Ninghua knew what was going on behind the scenes, but he couldn't reveal this in public. He looked at Jian Yueli and then swept another glance at the cultivators from the Wangshan watchtower. He still had an indifferent look in his eyes, as if he was dismissive of them. Since Goddess Jiang has said so, I will honor her words. After we leave this place, my father will determine your fate, Ninghua announced. It was as Jian Yueli said. These people couldn't escape the secret zone. They would not be going anywhere. If that was the case, there was no need for him to be hasty. Right now, he also lacked an excuse. After all, Futian was the one who killed those people. It wouldn't be appropriate for him to kill the cultivators from the Wanshan watchtower. This would easily arouse suspicion from others that Domain Chief Manor was aiding the Yan Kingdom and Li Xiao Palace. Even though that was the reality, no one could know. Jiang Yueli nodded her head slightly. Li Changxing looked at her and said over transmitted thoughts. Many thanks, goddess. If Ninghua chose to attack now, they would not be able to do anything. For now, they could only play by ear. Chapter 2055, Qingyi's Reason. Jiang Yueli looked at Li Changxing and the others with her beautiful eyes. Over transmitted thoughts, she replied. It was nothing. The reason why she had spoken up on their behalf was that she had indeed seen Great Yan ancient royal family and Li Xiao Palace instigating the matter. After all, she had personally witnessed the other party pursuing the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower. Now that the other party had been killed off instead, if the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower were punished, it would be unjust. These people also seemed to have all been killed by Futian. How had he managed to do so alone? This dispute was so intense that the various cultivators seemed to have forgotten about the battle itself. How had Futian killed Ling He and Yan Dongyang? The other party must have had powerful Renhuangs protecting them. Yet they had all been killed. Upon closer inspection, how terrifying exactly was Futian's combat ability? How much was he hiding? No one knew. No one had observed the battle. Those who did had all been slain aside from Futian. With these deaths, Lingxiao Palace and Great Yan ancient royal family would most likely not let Futian off. Moreover, Yan Dongyang and Ling He had also died. No matter what, the two forces would surely kill Futian. If the chief sided with Futian, that would be best. However, judging from Ninghua's attitude, that would be difficult. There would certainly be a large-scale battle once they left this secret zone. Futian was in a precarious position. It would also be difficult for Wangshan Watchtower to protect him. After all, Great Yan ancient royal family itself was against Wangshan Watchtower before this. Futian only happened to come along and joined Wangshan Watchtower to cultivate. After we leave the secret zone, await your sentence, ordered Ninghua as he swept a glance at Li Changxing and the other cultivators of the Wangshan Watchtower. The tone of his voice was domineering, and he used words that screeched in their ears. Await their sentence. It was as though, to him, the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower were criminals waiting to be sentenced. Li Changxing and Zhong Chan naturally understood where Ninghua was coming from. Indeed, they had to await their sentence. Since the chief himself was part of this, he would undoubtedly stand on Great Yan ancient royal family and Li Xiao Palace's side. If that was the case, why would he consider their position? They would most likely face a crisis after leaving this place. Over transmitted thought, the Millet Emperor instructed them to stay in the secret zone for as long as they could, asking them to delay their return to the outside world. The Millet Emperor was probably making preparations. However, if that happened, the Millet Emperor himself might offend the chief. Of course, since the chief was part of this himself, he was most likely also involved in Supreme Deity Donglai's death back in the day. If that were the case, the chief and the Millet Emperor would naturally be at odds. It was just that the chief had disguised it very well. They knew that the Millet Emperor had always wanted to get to the bottom of Supreme Deity Donglai's death. However, from the looks of it now, the closer they were to the truth of the matter, the more dangerous it would be. Li Changxing and the others did not say anything. The cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower all had cold looks in their eyes. They were suppressing the rage within them. However, this place was the turf of Domain Chief's manor. The other party was also the vice chief. Given the predicament they were in, no matter how angry they were, they had to hold it in for now. The cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower killed the prince of our Yan kingdom. Vice chief, you may wait for the chief to set a verdict. However, the Yan kingdom cannot wait. I hope vice chief can understand, a cold voice said, filled with murderous intent. The person who had spoken was the crown prince of the Yan kingdom, Yan Hanqing. Ninghua glanced at Yan Hanqing and then turned to leave. It was as though the matter was unrelated to him. On the other side, along a mountain stream, a beam of light flashed past and then came to a stop along the stream. Two silhouettes appeared there. One of them had white hair and was dressed in white robes. It was Futian, who had participated in the large-scale battle. He looked at the person beside him. Futian had met him before and had even fought against him. Chen Yi was rumored to have previously been a legendary figure in the Donghua heavens. There were many stories about him. He had an extremely powerful ability, and was proficient in the Sword of Light. His speed and killing power were terrifying. He actually managed to save Futian from Ninghua's clutches. It was apparent from this how frightening his speed was. It was just that Futian could not figure out why Chen Yi had helped him. Chen Yi had also offended Ninghua in the process of saving Futian. They were in the Donghua heavens, and Ninghua had a high standing here. It was definitely not wise to snatch away someone from Ninghua's hands. Moreover, Chen Yi had done so to a cultivator who had defeated him, and with whom he had no connections. Hence, Futian was perplexed. He looked at Chen Yi and said, "Many thanks, but why did you help me?" Chen Yi looked back at Futian. He smiled and said, "Would you believe me if I said that I believe we hit it off quite well?" "I do not believe so," Futian immediately replied. Chen Yi blinked. He then smiled and said, "I have been undefeated all this time. The only time I have ever lost was to you during the Donghua banquet. If you were killed or crippled by Ninghua, I would not have the chance to regain my honor. Hence, you have to live. Is that so?" Futian looked somewhat suspiciously at Chen Yi. This time, Chen Yi had offended Ninghua. Who else would dare to do so? Chen Yi merely did so because he wanted to battle Futian again and regain his honor? "You still don't believe me?" Chen Yi said when he saw the look in Futian's eyes. "Then, it might be because I cannot stand the actions of Great Yan ancient royal family in Leishao Palace. They attacked first and were instead killed off, yet they claimed the contrary. I really can't stand that the domain chief's manor came to take you into custody. Where is the reasoning behind that?" Futian did not say anything. Each reason Chen Yi gave sounded absurd. However, that was not important. What was important was that the other party had helped him escape. Futian still had a chance of survival. Futian peered into the distance. He did not continue questioning Chen Yi. The reason why he had helped Futian was not important, regardless of what it was. Would the members of Wangshan Watchtower be in danger? Futian thought to himself. He had killed Ling He and Yan Dongyang. Even if Ninghua wanted to act, he would still need to consider the image of the domain chief's manor. He could not just kill the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower without reason. Their lives should still be safe. However, right now, Futian could not foresee what would happen in the future, and how these events would play out. Currently, you are the nail in the eyes of two top forces. Ninghua also wants to take you into custody. It seems that you have nowhere to go. What do you plan to do? Chen Yi asked Futian. Futian shook his head. He was also at a loss. Before this, he had participated in the Donghua banquet to join the domain chief's manor. Who knew that it would end up like this? The domain chief was the true mastermind. When Futian obtained the teachings of Supreme Deity Donglai, he was destined to be at odds with the chief. I have a suggestion, Chen Yi said. What is it? Futian asked. The Demon God Temple, Chen Yi explained. There is a disturbance in the Demon God Temple. The various demonic beasts have gathered over there. This secret zone certainly contains some secrets. Even the members of Domain Chief's Manor have not managed to uncover these secrets. Why don't we head over and try out our luck? Who knows? We might stumble upon some benefits. Futian frowned. The various cultivators were also gathered there. If they went over, wouldn't they instantly draw the attention of the other cultivators? With his current situation, it seemed inappropriate. Chapter 2056, Sealed Space. Chen Yi seemed to have detected Futian's hesitation and said, Don't worry. The Demon God Temple is located in a restricted area in the mountain. Even the chief can't do anything about it. No one can approach the restricted area. With all the demons there, people from the Great Yen and the Lingxiao Palace wouldn't dare to act recklessly. Besides, I can get myself out safely if I encounter danger. Yi Futian looked at Qinyi, who appeared to possess a light elemental magic weapon and unparalleled speed. How did you know the chief can't do anything about the demon god temple? Yi Futian asked Qinyi. It seemed that Qinyi knew more than he should. Why would the demon god temple still be in the secret zones if the chief knew what to do? He would have pillaged it a long time ago. You don't believe that the chief of the domain chief's manor in the Donghua domain is some nice man, do you? Qinyi said. All the chiefs of the 18 domains in the Divine Prefecture are extraordinary old monsters who have lived for long. They have tremendous influence, and aim to advance to the highest cultivation plane to free themselves from the heavenly path's restraint. They would not hesitate to exploit anything that could be beneficial to cultivation. Few things in the world remain appealing to them. They only care about the path to the pinnacle. Yi Futian nodded in agreement. Qinyi had a point. Moreover, Yi Futian could tell from this incident that Chief Ning was a crafty, devious, and hazardous person who could kill with underhanded means. These old monsters were not good people for sure. However, Yi Futian was still secretly suspicious even though Qinyi made a good point. This prominent figure who had become a legend in the Donghua heavens many years ago gave Yi Futian a mysterious feeling. Yi Futian couldn't easily figure out Qinyi's thoughts. There is no need to keep thinking about it. Why would I help you if I intended to harm you? Few people in the Donghua heavens can impress me, and you are one of them. We can go anywhere in the Divine Prefecture if we work together, Qinyi said with a smile. Yi Futian nodded and stopped hesitating. He said, Let's go. After that, they rushed through the mountain in the direction of the demon god temple. In the meantime, Yi Futian took out the Zimiyuanyang mirror to communicate with Xia Qingyuan. He asked her to stay safe and not to go to any dangerous places. They started to feel the rhythm again as they approached the area. Hearts palpitating, Yi Futian and Qinyi could hear the pounding sound that came from their chests. They knew they were close to the destination. What kind of place is the demon god temple? Why does it make our hearts beat rapidly? Yi Futian asked Qinyi as though he intended to assess how much Qinyi knew about the demon god temple. Are you asking me? Qinyi turned back and looked at him with a smile. Yi Futian didn't push for an answer. Let's check it out there. Qinyi pointed at a mountain in front of them. Then they climbed to the top of the mountain and looked into the distance. The demon god temple sat on the barren land surrounded by the black divine mountains. It seemed to be a short distance away, yet also looked unreal and elusive. Plenty of demonic beasts were struggling to approach the temple while letting out deep bellows. Their bodies were changing and their blood boiling. With eyes glowing red and hearts pounding violently, they were desperate to get close to the demon god temple. The black wind condor was among the demonic beasts. It darted a glance at the mountains afar where Yi Futian was at this moment. Boss, the demon god temple must contain some divine item that could make the demonic beasts evolve and transform. I can feel its huge impact without getting near it. Yi Futian's eyes sparkled as an idea occurred to him. Many powerful demon emperors were also moving toward the demon god temple. But they all acted with extra caution, as if the closer they got to the temple, the slower they walked and the stronger their demonic chi became. Be careful. Yi Futian transmitted his voice back to the black wind condor. He gazed at the area of the black divine mountain where a lot of demon emperors and renhuangs were gathering. The battle hadn't broken out yet. Human cultivators who entered the secret zones were still there. Besides, he also saw the strange young man who attacked them before. Yi Futian felt a chill run down his spine. It looked like that the attack before was arranged by someone. Only the domain chief's manor had the capacity to make it happen. It was a scheme to murder Yi Futian and other cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower. They would have died in the hands of Linghe, Yan Dongyang, and others if Yi Futian didn't employ his full strength. Yi Futian couldn't extend his divine consciousness very far in this area. The rhythm would shatter it. Yi Futian could only rely on his eyes. Do you know why there are demonic beasts in the secret zones? Yi Futian asked Qinyi. He wondered how much Qinyi knew about the domain chief's manor and the secret zones. I heard a little about it. Chinny answered. Rumor has it that the secret zones are more than a trial field for cultivators from the domain chief's manor of the Donghua domain. It is also a giant sealed land. But it's unclear what exactly is being sealed here. Perhaps the targets are these demonic beasts. The secret zones become their prison and keep them here. The secret zones are sealing in something? Yi Futian thought to himself. While gazing at the front, he heard a howl of anguish. A cultivator in the Renhuang plain exploded surprisingly. The scene was startling and grisly as the blood sprayed everywhere. It seemed that the Renhuang blew up for not being able to withstand the rhythm. So terrifying. Yi Futian narrowed his eyes. He could feel the relentless rhythm from afar. His body might actually burst apart if he went too close. Demonic beasts have stronger blood force and can resist it better. It's tough for human cultivators to approach the demon god temple. Chenny explained to Yi Futian. Yi Futian nodded. The demonic beasts had potent blood force and were usually a cut above human cultivators at the same level. However, they also had significantly inferior comprehension skills and mostly relied on their instincts. One human cultivator was the closest to the demon god temple. It was desolation from the desolate god palace. The frightening black energy currents flowed around his body. Every step he took trembled the ground and sterilized the field. While treading forward, his heart was also palpitating, and his blood was surging and roaring inside as if it were about to rush out of his body. Many big demon beasts were around and gazing at the demon god temple. Why did the abnormal changes suddenly happen at the demon god temple? Would this be an opportunity for them? They had been imprisoned in the total darkness here for so many years, being trampled upon and experimented on by human cultivators at will. There was no way for them to break the seal and escape. Yi Futian's heart was still pounding rapidly. Standing on top of the mountain, he started to feel that the secret zones were nothing ordinary. Thinking of that, he released the energy currents of the great path from his body and spread it to the boundless space. His eyes also became strange and eerie. In an instant, a shocking scene came into his sight and made his heart beat violently in his chest. That is... Yi Futian was astounded. Staring straight ahead, he saw a magnificent view. The whole world appeared to be fake, created by the Great Path. The energy flowing in the world was the Grand Seal Great Path. As the divine light of the seals glowing brightly, numerous sealing runes became visible. He couldn't have a clear view from the sky. But it looked like there was a divine item. The space of the entire secret zone was sealed off, as though the endless secret zone was a formidable great path domain of Grand Seal. The demon god temple was even more shocking. Yi Futian previously thought that the demon god temple belonged to the demon clan. But now, he found out that the demon god temple was also shrouded by the divine light of the seals. Like a mix of patterns of the great path, the Grand Seal Great Path closed off the area with the demon god temple at the center. It was too blurry for his real eyes to see. He could only sense it vaguely with his divine eyes. This is the consummate Great Path, Yi Futian thought to himself. The consummate Great Path formed an absolute Great Path domain and created a separate space, seemingly ordinary yet unique. Only people in the same cultivation level could sense its existence. Yi Futian happened to be able to sense and see it. Rat-a-tat. The rhythm grew stronger and stronger inside the demon god temple, making the cultivators' hearts pound more violently. Watch out! A Renhuang with bulging blue veins yelped when he felt that his blood was about to rush out. Immediately, with a fizz, his blood sprayed out of his body. He let out a piercing cry in agony and was turned into a pool of blood. Everyone around was palpitating with fear. Yi Futian's eyes were fixed on the sealed divine temple. What on earth was inside? Chapter 2057, Attempt on the Demon God Temple. Chenny asked Yi Futian. The Donghua domain sealed the secret zone here and guarded the demon god temple with countless big demon beasts in the mountain. What do you think they have inside? Yi Futian shook his head and said, It can make people's hearts palpitate and blood boil. Anyone who comes closer would self-explode. It doesn't seem to be a magical weapon or the will of the demon god. Those two would not have such effects. I can't guess it out. Do you want to try to get in to have a look? Qin Yi's eyes were blazing. He was restless, as though he was eager to enter the sealed demon god temple to see what was inside and satisfy his burning curiosity. Yi Futian gazed into the distance. The big demon beasts and human cultivators all wanted to get in. Nevertheless, anyone who approached the demon god temple was under tremendous pressure and couldn't be careless for a split second. Several cultivators already died in front of the demon god temple. They blew up immediately despite being at the Renhuang plain. Sure. Yi Futian made a prompt decision without hesitation. He agreed to check it out with Chen Yi. He could see the sealing energy present in the void and wondered if he had a chance to get in. The chief of the domain chief's manor of the Donghua domain was behind this, which meant that Yi Futian was already facing desperate conditions right now. He was very likely to be killed even if he left this place. That being the case, he might as well attempt on the demon god temple. Whatever that was sealed in the demon god temple must be a divine item. Even Chief Ning had to do his utmost to apply the sealing techniques here. Therefore, the divine item must deserve the efforts. If Yi Futian could get his hand on it, he might be able to pose a threat to Chief Ning? He had no choice but to give it a try under current circumstances. Thinking of that, Yi Futian walked down the mountain and stepped forward. Qin Yi cracked a smile upon seeing Yi Futian moving. He followed Yi Futian close behind and walked toward the barren area. At this point, plenty of cultivators were already heading to the demon god temple from all directions through the surrounding barren area. There were both native demon emperors and renhuangs who came from other places. Nonetheless, most casual cultivators had given up and didn't dare to act rashly. They would be better off searching for opportunities elsewhere rather than risking their lives here. People who attempted on the temple here were almost all renhuangs from various top forces. Yi Futian and Qin Yi immediately attracted many people's eyes. They dashed through the field at full speed while maintaining the same pace. Soon, they overtook a line of cultivators and reached the front. Their blood force was rolling and surging as they were approaching the demon god temple. Yi Futian felt that the blood in his body was getting out of his control and rushing wildly. He could hear the pounding heartbeats from his chest. "Brother Yi!" A voice rang out from nearby. It was Jiang Jiuming from the Jiang clan, ancient royal family of the Luotian continent. He was surprised to see Yi Futian and Chen Yi together. Yi Futian and Chen Yi fought against each other in the past. How come they were on the same team now? Was it because they appreciated each other's talents? Chen Yi was a powerful cultivator. Jiang Jiuming wasn't confident that he could defeat him if he were ever matched against him. Yi Futian nodded at Jiang Jiuming. He figured that Jiang Jiuming might not be aware of the change in the situation since Jiang Jiuming didn't know what happened on the other side. "The demon god temple is quite strange. Your heart will beat rapidly, and your blood will boil and rush out of your body if you get too close. Be careful," Jiang Jiuming reminded Yi Futian since he was new here. Although Yi Futian was a remarkable cultivator, his talents and combat ability wouldn't make much difference here. "Thank you." Yi Futian turned back to respond to Jiang Jiuming, then kept moving forward at a slower pace. The rhythm originated from the demon god temple was getting stronger, and he could only advance after adapting to the change. The renhuangs who exploded before failed to adjust their bodies and couldn't bear the pressure, which led to their demise. Yi Futian unleashed formidable energy of the way of life which surrounded his body. He was filled with the endless power of life, which boosted his blood essence and replenished his strength. Although his heart was pounding, he managed to keep it under control. He headed straight to the Black Divine Temple. Another screech rang out toward the front. Blood spraying, someone was flung back, passing by many people. He uttered a quiet sound and threw up a pool of blood. It was a rather tragic scene. The man inhaled a deep breath, and his eyes were filled with regret. He couldn't hold out against the rhythm. It looked like he wouldn't be the fortunate one to enter the demon god temple after all. He wondered if anyone could solve the mystery of the demon god temple. Maybe Minghua the vice chief knew the secret. But he wouldn't come here. Bang! Yi Futian kept walking. Under the protection of the power of the great path of life, he strode forward and passed more cultivators, which astounded many of them. Not only did Yi Futian have extraordinary talents, but he could also surpass them here. Rat-a-tat. Yi Futian's heart was beating more rapidly, and the blood in his veins was flowing wildly. He started to slow down. His eyes glowed eerily, and the energy currents of the great path spread forward to help him make out the area ahead. Numerous scenes popped in his head. Seals were interwoven together in front of him. He could vaguely see the divine light of the seals shining in the sky, blotting out the sun and covering the entire field. The demon god temple was enveloped and sealed by it. Many people showed a strange look when they noticed Yi Futian, including top cultivators from the desolate god palace. They realized that Yi Futian overtook most of the people in no time and had reached the front. He was about to catch up to desolation. Besides that, big demon beasts were also there, such as the handsome young man from before. Nevertheless, Qingyi was not as energetic as Yi Futian and stopped following Yi Futian a while ago. His face reddened, and the blood force was gushing in his body. The condition of his heart and blood flow was about to reach his limit. His exceptional fighting ability was no use here. It was a little embarrassing for him to talk Yi Futian into coming here while he couldn't keep up himself. But he absolutely shouldn't strain himself here, and could only do what his strength allowed. A line of people raced to the front and was stunned to see Yi Futian. After the initial shock wore off, they glared at him with intense hatred and sheer malice. They didn't expect Yi Futian to come here directly. How audacious these were cultivators from the great Yan ancient royal family and the Lingxiao palace. They couldn't track down Yi Futian. Instead, they battled against Li Changxing and the others, having no choice but to let them off the hook when they retreated later. Let's go. These cultivators charged at Yi Futian and planned to kill him right here. The chief wouldn't blame them. Chapter 2058, Courting Death. A range of divine mountains stood before them. The demon god temple was located on the desolate moor surrounded by the divine mountains. Cultivators were marching to the black divine palace from all directions. At this point, people sensed that a hint of menace was approaching. A group of cultivators with icy eyes glared at Yi Futian, who was leading the way to the moorland. Many people, including cultivators from the Jiang clan ancient royal family, showed a strange look. They were surprised to see cultivators from the great Yan ancient royal family and the Lingxiao palace charging toward Yi Futian with malice. What happened between them? The cultivators from the great Yan ancient royal family and the Lingxiao palace also felt the pressure coming from the divine palace as they were moving forward. Their hearts were pounding violently, and blood rushing in a frenzy. A peculiar type of power shielded the area. Any divine consciousness they released was crushed here immediately. Therefore, they soon slowed down. Watching from behind, they saw that Yi Futian kept moving forward and had increased the distance between them. Approaching the demon god temple, he had joined the first echelon and entered the area where most people couldn't get to. A frightening golden dragon took shape behind Yan Hanqing. Bearing fangs and brandishing claws, it made threatening gestures while hovering in the sky and blotting out the sun. Go! Yan Hanqing pointed his finger forward while staring at Yi Futian. In an instant, the divine golden dragon roared and pounced toward Yi Futian. With a series of raucous noise, the golden dragon seemed to have encountered tremendous resistance and obstruction. The closer it got to Yi Futian, the slower it moved. All of a sudden, its gigantic body started to disintegrate and break into pieces. Upon seeing it, Yi Futian took out a divine sword and jabbed the dragon in the sky. Without any suspense, the sword pierced through the divine golden dragon, and its giant body shattered at once. Yi Futian's divine sword flew back to him. His heart rate was still increasing. Yi Futian certainly knew that he didn't fend off the attack from Yan Hanqing so easily by himself. It was because they were situated in a special area where even top renhuangs might blow up due to the pressure. The attack of the great path generated by a renhuang surely would be destroyed just the same. Yan Hanqing also realized the situation. He glared at Yi Futian from behind and let out a deafening roar. It was the song of the Yen dragon. The terrifying sonic wave charged at Yi Futian directly. Nevertheless, Yan Hanqing could clearly feel that the power of the sonic wave was weakened continuously. It was no longer threatening when it reached Yi Futian and was shattered in the end. Fizz! Another Renhuang who was walking in between Yan Hanqing and Yi Futian died after uttering a yelp. He was concentrating on withstanding the scary power coming from the demon god temple, and was attacked by the song of the Yen dragon out of the blue. His spiritual will was devastated right away and could no longer protect him. He died tragically. Go ahead and attack him if you want. Don't get other people into trouble, someone said to Yan Hanqing in an irritated tone. A lot of cultivators turned back and glared at Yan Hanqing. In the area between Yan Hanqing and Yi Futian, they were worried about becoming collateral damage like the man before. With a grim expression, Yan Hanqing wrapped his body with the energy of the Great Path and protected himself with a real dragon. He burst out tremendous spiritual will and stepped forward, charging at Yi Futian with the intent to kill him. Yan Hanqing was not the only one. Powerful Renhuangs from both the great Yan ancient royal family and the Lingxiao palace were moving toward Yi Futian, aiming to swarm around him. Yi Futian turned back to have a look, then kept going forward. His face was stern as well. With a thundering bang of the Great Path, he protected his body with the divine tree and unleashed formidable energy of life. His Great Path remained strong, and his spiritual energy was at its peak. He slowed down as if he couldn't sustain himself. But the enemies were approaching him from behind. Plenty of notable cultivators from the great Yan ancient royal family and the Lingxiao palace were getting closer to Yi Futian. What happened? Jiang Jiuming wasn't informed of the situation and was shocked to see their behavior. There seemed to be irreconcilable conflicts between Yi Futian, the great Yan ancient royal family, and the Lingxiao palace. They all acted as though they were determined to kill each other. However, before they entered the secret zones, the chief had personally ordered them not to fight against each other inside the secret zones. They had to keep things under control even if conflicts arose. Yi Futian turned around, took a few steps, and stopped. His heart was pounding violently, but the energy currents of the Great Path flowed out of his body and spread to the surrounding area. A hint of menace gleamed in his eyes. These people wanted to approach him from behind and kill him? He waited for a while, and some of the enemies were pretty close already. Yan Hanqing reminded the others. Be careful. Yan Hanqing sensed enormous pressure. So did everyone else. The tiniest mistake might bring death to themselves. They had to be extra cautious. Yi Futian already stopped in front of them. He probably didn't have the strength to keep going any longer. A cultivator from the Lingxiao palace took out a spear that was glowing with the terrifying, golden divine light of the Great Path. It looked like it could penetrate the space and would allow him to slaughter Yi Futian as long as they moved a little closer. The blood force was surging in their bodies, and their hearts were palpitating in the chests. They were about to reach their limits. At this point, Yi Futian took a few steps closer to the demon god temple and stopped again. The cultivators from the great Yan ancient royal family and the Lingxiao palace were unsettled. But they were here already and couldn't give up now. Thinking of that, they moved forward a little bit more. The closer they got to the Black Palace, the stronger the pressure was. Their hearts were beating even more rapidly. The spear holding by the Renhuang from the Lingxiao palace stretched out and emitted brilliant divine light. Just when he was about to strike Yi Futian moved 2 steps closer to the temple. The energy currents of the Great Path were roaring around his body. His face was contorted when he turned back as though he was suffering from great pain. He can't hold on any longer, said Yan Hanqing. He felt like he was reaching his limit, and would be in danger if he moved forward more. Yi Futian was closer to the temple than them, and must be in a more vulnerable situation. With that in mind, they kept going to push Yi Futian further. Yi Futian would either self-explode or be killed by them. There was no way out for him. But just when they thought Yi Futian couldn't sustain himself, Yi Futian walked a few steps further into the desolate moor. 8 Renhuangs from the great Yan ancient royal family and the Lingxiao palace were close to him enough. They forced themselves to take one more step. Several of them already reached the threshold. The Great Path around their bodies was bellowing, and their spiritual will was strained. They were about to break down. The Black Divine Temple emitted a frightening pressure that suppressed them, upset their blood force, and trembled their hearts. The blood in their bodies was boiling. At this moment, Futian turned around to face them. His dark eyes were filled with intense hatred, and his cold face was not distorted anymore. "I will grant your wish since you're so eager to die," said Futian. The energy currents of the great path from his body flowed along with the dark energy that originated from this area rather than being destroyed. The moon hung in the sky and shone the Yin divine light upon the cultivators from the great Yan ancient royal family and the Lingxiao palace. The Renhuangs closer to Futian were astounded and frightened. They released the great path to defend themselves from the Yin divine light. Bathing in the Yin divine light, they felt that a bitter chill was invading their spiritual will and freezing their spiritual souls. Their defense seemed even more useless at this moment. How can he unleash the energy of the great path? They thought to themselves. How did Futian achieve that? Futian's frosty eyes shot them a cold glare. He had a perfect divine will and the great path formed by the natal spirit of the world tree, which could still release energy in this space. He tested it before and had been waiting for his enemies to provoke him. "Retreat!" Yan Hanqing bellowed. With a shrilling cry, a person who was trying to protect himself from the energy of Futian's great path couldn't hold on any longer. Blood spurted out, and his body exploded into countless pieces. With a series of screech, 5 cultivators were killed in the blink of an eye. Yan Hanqing protected his body with the pure-blooded dragon, which was also shattering under attack. He uttered a snort and pulled back in a rush. Fizz! Hearts pounding, he threw up a pool of blood and was also bleeding from his eyes, nose, and ears. He turned around and ran away from that area immediately. The other 2 cultivators who survived the attack were not in better condition. They had no choice but to take to their heels despite being 8th and 9th order Renhuangs. More cultivators from the great Yan ancient royal family and the Lingxiao palace who attempted to rush forward stopped as soon as they saw what happened to Yan Hanqing. Instead, they beat a hasty retreat with sullen faces. Futian killed more high-level Renhuangs from their side. Yi Lianyan! They were consumed with hatred. Other cultivators who witnessed the battle were also disconcerted. Futian slaughtered several Renhuangs from the great Yan ancient royal family and the Lingxiao palace. Did he finally fall out with those 2 groups? However, would the domain chief's manner let him off the hook for disobeying the rules set by Chief Ning? How would Futian explain to Chief Ning after leaving the secret zones? The bystanders had no idea that Chief Ning was behind everything. Futian couldn't care less about the rule because Chief Ning was waiting to kill him anyway if he got out. Chapter 2059, Fraught with Dangers. On top of that, the cultivators Futian just killed were not nobodies. Apart from Chief Ning, the great Yan ancient royal family and the Lingxiao palace wouldn't let it slide, either. Everyone was shocked to see Futian slaughtered the cultivators here, defying several high-level masters. How could they spare his life after he got out? Most of Renhuangs here witnessed Futian's performance at the Donghua banquet. With his extraordinary talents and remarkable abilities, he hadn't lost any match yet. Even the genius cultivators couldn't beat him. Certainly, he could have had a limitless future and might even become the best in the entire Divine Prefecture. He carried out a massacre without scruples in the secret zones. Wouldn't he alter his destiny by doing so? A lot of people couldn't figure out the reason. Under such circumstances, he wouldn't have any chance to survive unless Chief Ning pardoned him. Considering his exceptional talents, would Chief Ning show mercy on him if he was willing to join the domain chief's manor? The crowd soon found out the answer. A group of people, including Vice Chief Ning Hua of the domain chief's manor, arrived somewhere nearby. They followed the cultivators from the great Yan ancient royal family and the Lingxiao palace and came over. Ning Hua's piercing gaze focused on Futian. They were far away from each other, yet the bystanders could already feel the might of the great path. Ning Hua seemed to be angry, his eyes frosty. Of course, Futian also noticed Ning Hua, who couldn't have arrived at a less opportune moment. Futian turned around and kept walking forward. He was under horrifying pressure at this moment. But Ning Hua would capture him and seal his fate if he didn't push forward. The goddesses from the divine palace of fluttering snow had a puzzled look on their exquisite faces. They didn't understand why Futian would come here and put his neck in the noose. Moreover, he killed several powerful renhuangs from the great Yan ancient royal family and the Lingxiao palace. Those two top forces surely suffered a great loss from this trip to the secret zones. Ning Hua stepped forward. Everyone turned their attention to him. What did he plan to do? Buzz! Like a bolt of lightning, Ning Hua directly charged at Futian, who infuriated him by committing murders in the secret zones. Futian killed several renhuangs right under his nose. He is so fast. Ning Hua's speed made the crowd tremble. He rushed straight to Futian at full speed as if the pressure from the demon god temple couldn't affect him at all. Of course, that was impossible. The only possibility was that Ning Hua held out against the pressure with his great strength. Ning Hua's body was surrounded by the brilliant divine light of the Great Path. He sealed off that space and unleashed a burst of energy that darted toward Futian at front. Soon, it reached Futian's body. Ning Hua is going to attack Futian. Lots of people were astounded by what just happened. With his status and identity, Ning Hua virtually represented the domain chief's manner. If he intended to attack Futian right now, how could Futian survive, even if he made out of the secret zones alive? What on earth happened? Why would an incredible cultivator who displayed phenomenal talents at the Donghua banquet antagonize the best cultivator in the Donghua domain when they were already facing imminent peril? Futian would have no chance to survive if he were hit by Ning Hua. Jiang Yueli and Qin Qing exchanged a look, both feeling sorry for Futian. Ning Hua might actually aim to kill Futian this time since they were at each other's throats already. They didn't understand why Futian would come here. If he waited till he got out of the secret zones and explained the incident to the chief, he might still have a chance if the cultivators from the Great Yan and the Lingxiao Palace attacked him first. Clearly, they were not aware of Futian's current situation either. Futian saw Ning Hua's move and kept going forward. Ning Hua chased after him. Although he gradually slowed down, the divine light around his body was even more dazzling. He even shot 2 beams of divine light from Futian's eyes, which inhibited Futian's power. Ning Hua's great path seemed to break free from the restraint in this space as well. Bang! Futian unleashed a tremendous life force inside his body. The branches and leaves of the world tree spirit reached every part of his body and transformed him into a divine tree filled with grand energy of life that prevented him from falling into decay. To everyone's surprise, Futian sped up and kept moving forward. He overtook Desolation and became the cultivator who was closest to the demon god temple. He is crazy! Everyone was astonished. Since Ning Hua had moved on Futian, perhaps Futian was desperate to find a way to escape from the hopeless situation. He had no choice but to brace himself to keep going. Ning Hua followed Futian forward without any hesitation. Despite being under tremendous pressure, he walked with firm and steady steps, emitting the bright divine light of the Great Path. How could he fail to accomplish what Futian was capable of? The divine light of the Grand Seal Great Path dazzled around him and transfigured into numerous ancient characters. Countless seal spells swirled in the air and sealed off that space, which turned this area into his Great Path domain. Even the might of the Great Path of the Divine Temple couldn't resist the seal spells. Ning Hua raised his hand and pushed forward a terrifying cyclone. Raging waves took shape and dashed the space. Futian immediately felt enormous pressure. Futian turned around and aimed his figure at the incoming attack. The figure turned into a brilliant divine sword. With a deafening bang, 2 forces came into collision. The raging waves kept moving forward. It shattered the space and shook the area Futian was in. Bang! Futian was flung away with a loud bang. He was already under extreme pressure and took a hit from Ning Hua. Like a tight string, he could break at any second. Futian uttered a low rumbling sound and threw up a mouthful of blood. He could hear his heart pounding violently and feel his blood rushing wildly. His blood force was surging. It's over! A terrible thought popped up in people's minds when they saw what happened to Futian. This genius cultivator was probably going to meet his end. Ning Hua's attack directly sent Yi Futian to the area right in front of the illusory demon god temple. Since Yi Futian was severely injured already, he probably would explode right away. The crowd stared at the silver-haired man ahead who was not moving a muscle. A lot of them were suffering from palpitation. Cultivators who were standing close to each other could even hear the heartbeat of other people. The goddesses from the divine palace of fluttering snow were also gazing at Yi Futian. Some of them didn't have the heart to watch Yi Futian die here. They didn't expect that Ning Hua would kill Yi Futian. It would be a great pity if such an incredible young man bit the dust like this. Although it hadn't been long since Yi Futian made a name for himself in the Donghua domain, no one could ignore his presence because of his mind-blowing ability. Every cultivator from every top force in the Donghua domain knew about Yi Liunian. Yi Liunian was already in the same league as the 4 best cultivators. People's eyes were glued on Yi Futian in the silence. Motionless, Yi Futian's body didn't explode as many people expected even after a while. On the contrary, a beam of blinding divine light of the Great Path shone from his body. The blazing divine light of the Great Path wrapped around Yi Futian. Countless branches and leaves spread out. He transfigured into a divine tree filled with magnificent energy of life that would never die out. Some people even had a vague feeling that Yi Futian became different now, but they couldn't exactly name the difference. He was protected by the divine light, and as striking as God's sun. Yi Futian's eyes changed into a golden color. He raised his head and darted Ning Hua a cold look. Bathing in the brilliant divine light, Yi Futian turned around and walked toward the demon god temple. Countless pairs of eyes were glued on him. How did he survive it? More importantly, what did he want to do? He was walking straight to the divine temple as though the pressure coming from the temple couldn't kill him. Ning Hua frowned. He also sensed that something about Yi Futian had changed. It felt like Yi Futian activated a special type of power, but Ning Hua couldn't figure out what it was exactly. Even so, he knew that the power was the reason that Yi Futian could withstand the pressure and approach the divine temple. What kind of power was it? Chapter 2060, The Sealed Item. At this point, Yi Futian finally stood in front of the demon god temple. Although the demon god temple was towering over everyone, it still seemed unreal and elusive. Terrifying thunder roared. The great path in Yi Futian's body was vibrating. His heart kept pounding violently, and his blood was rolling and surging in the veins. Much to everyone's surprise, he managed to stand in front of the demon god temple in one piece. Back off! A cold voice rang out. It was the demon emperor who fought against Yi Futian and the others before. He emanated a frightening amount of the demonic qi from his body. The demon god temple was their holy land where no outsider could approach for years. They were trapped there to look after the divine temple. All they had wished for was that one of them could enter the temple someday, obtain the heritage from the demon god, and break free from the sealing power. Yet now, a human cultivator reached the demon god temple. He can't get in. Ning Hua gazed at Yi Futian and declared. He was the son of the chief and certainly knew what kind of a place this was. He was well aware of the sealing power the divine temple was subject to. It was the ultimate divine sealing technique that made the temple visible to the eyes but not tangible. Even though Yi Futian was standing in front of the demon god temple, it was utterly meaningless. Ning Hua never attempted to enter the demon god temple because he knew that no one could get in. The divine sealing techniques were accomplished with the divine book's help, which was a priceless treasure and a divine item that was created before the collapse of the heavenly path. Each domain chief's manor of the 18 domains in the divine prefecture possessed a precious treasure. Many master cultivators of the divine prefecture's top forces also owned ancient divine items, which was why they had the opportunities to cultivate to the highest level. The Millet Emperor, for instance, received a divine stela. The domain chief's manor had a divine item in their possession as well. Therefore, there was no point for Yi Futian to stand there since he couldn't get in the demon god temple anyway. According to Ning Hua's father, the divine sealing technique created the delusive divine seal that was invisible and intangible. It kept the demon god temple in the land of the void. Yi Futian obviously realized it as well. Staring straight ahead, his eyes glowed with strange divine light. he sensed the horrifying divine sealing technique. The demon god temple radiated infinite divine light of the seals yet had no shadow or real shape. The will of the great path emanated from Futian's body. The energy currents of the great path circulated. In an instant, beams of the divine light of the seals flowed toward Futian and were absorbed by his life spirit and life palace. Wrapped around with divine light of the seals, he started to have a clearer view of the demon god temple. It seemed as if he was about to integrate with the divine light of the seals. However, Futian's figure became blurrier in other people's eyes. He seemed farther away. At that moment, many people had an illusion that Futian was getting closer to the unreal divine temple, notwithstanding that neither the divine temple nor Futian had moved at all. They still felt this way. What is going on? An astonishing look showed on people's faces. Did Futian really have a way to get inside? Ninghua also knitted his brows in confusion. At this point, Futian really felt like he was standing in front of the demon god temple. The energy of the great path inside his body was roaring even more wildly. His heart was pounding loudly, and he could feel the strong vibration. Staring at the door in front of him, Futian reached out both hands and pushed forward. A ray of blinding light shone out of the demon god temple at once. Everyone closed their eyes right away. Bang! One after another, cultivators were flung away. Even Ninghua felt a terrifying quiver that made him step back. He put down his hands that had been shielding his eyes and looked at the glaring light. The silver-haired man pushed open the door of the demon god temple with both hands. Bathing in the dazzling light, Futian looked like God. How could it be possible? Ninghua was astonished and confounded. He tried it before and knew it was impossible. But Futian somehow pushed the door open. Could it be that the abnormal movement in the demon god temple happened because the seals were loose? Perhaps Futian only had such an opportunity because the demon god temple itself had changed? At this moment, the condition in that area changed abruptly. Brilliant divine light shone from the demon god temple directly to the sky. The divine light illuminated the entire secret zone. Someone uttered a yelp and exploded for not being able to bear the pressure. Other people ran off in a frenzy. Even powerful cultivators like Ninghua beat a hasty retreat. They stared at the radiating divine temple and saw rays of divine light casting from the sky above the secret zone. Ninghua raised his head and watched the divine light that seemed to contain limitless sealing power coming from above. At that point, the entire secret zone was shaking. The divine light of the great path shining from all directions looked like countless flashes of lightning. Everyone had an illusion that they had become infinitely small at this moment. It was rare for domineering Renhuangs to feel helpless and humbled. The power generated at this time seemed to be coming from the authority of heaven. What happened just now? All the cultivators raised their heads to look at the sky. The world was on a rampage at this moment. Many people only realized now that the secret zone was a sealed space world. The divine light of the seals shone upon the demon god temple from above while more divine light was being cast from all directions. They vaguely saw a book that looked like the God's seal book high up in the sky. But there seemed to be a breach on the seal. The breach was enlarged when Futian pushed the door open. The energy inside the demon god temple was getting worse. The unparalleled divine light of the great path blazed down. Many demonic beasts were prostrating themselves on the ground, worshipping the demon god temple. It was the energy of the demon god. Is the seal broken for real? Ninghua muttered to himself upon seeing the horrifying scene. As powerful as he was, he didn't feel confident at all at this moment. He was puny in the face of this kind of power. Get out of here now! Ninghua ordered without hesitation. Everyone pulled back immediately at full speed. But a large number of demonic beasts couldn't bear to leave. They stayed in the area and worshipped the demon god temple. Buzz! The divine light shone from the demon god temple and collided with the divine light of the seals coming from above. In the blink of an eye, everything was demolished. The mountains were crumbling and collapsing, the ground cracking. The secret zone was being destroyed as the space was torn open. In the midst of that, Futian walked into the demon god temple. He broke the seal and triggered everything simply by pushing the door open. He stood in place and raised his head to watch everything that was happening around him. His heart was beating so wildly that he was on the verge of kneeling over. At this moment, the divine tree appeared in his body. The divine light of the ancient tree protected him from being annihilated. Is this the demon god? Futian could feel his heart pounding while staring at the gigantic thing in front of him. He entered the burial ground of the gods. Legend had it that there were plenty of gods in the distant past. Nobody had stepped foot in the mysterious site located in the secret zone of the domain chief's manor of the Donghua domain. Other than the chief, probably no one in the entire Donghua domain knew that a divine item was sealed here. Chapter 2061, Certain Death. It was a gigantic beast. Its body was dazzling, covered in brilliant feathers of all colors. These feathers fanned out, seemingly containing countless multicolored jewels. They also seemed like mirrors, refracting dazzling divine light. On his head, he wore a crown adorned with gemstones. He was filled with an unparalleled majestic aura. This was a peacock demon god. Aside from unparalleled majesty, he was also beautiful beyond comparison. Right then, the jewels on his feathers seemed to radiate endless colorful light. It broke the seals and the locks, shooting light out into the vast space. Countless beams of divine light shot out into this part of the secret zone, causing the space to collapse and crumble. Futian's heart was beating violently. This proud peacock king had his eyes closed. There was not a speck of life force on him. This was a peacock demon god who had long perished. Otherwise, who could keep him trapped here? He was certainly also an extremely ancient demon god. Yet, even though he had perished for eons, he still looked so dazzling and required so many sealing techniques to keep him sealed away here. What exactly caused him to have such frightening destructive power still? Futian's heart was still beating intensely. As he stood before the peacock demon god, he felt a suffocating pressure. Futian felt his blood churning inside his body. A dazzling divine halo radiated from his body. The World Tree life spirit was frenziedly unleashed. It was bathed in imperial glory and stood there erect like a deity. If it weren't for the World Tree, Futian wouldn't have been able to withstand such pressure. Thump! Thump! The sound of his heartbeat persisted. Futian looked at the body of the peacock. The body of the peacock demon god, shining with brilliant divine light, was hollow. It was covered in divine light. The blood in his body had long dried up. This dazzling figure retained his appearance when he was still alive. What is that? Futian stared ahead. From inside the peacock demon god, he could hear a thumping sound. Futian's heart also beat furiously to this rhythm. He saw a resplendent crystal. It shone with divine light. It seemed that it was the reason the peacock demon god was unleashing such a divine halo. It also caused other people to be unable to approach it. They would not be able to withstand its power. Thump! The thumping sound continued. With each beat, Futian felt as though his heart was about to leap out from his body. His expression became one of intense interest. A thought surfaced in his mind. Was this the divine heart of the peacock? It was the heart of the peacock demon god. The heart of the peacock demon god, who had perished eons ago, was actually still beating? It was the heart of a god. Buzz. Brilliant light radiated outwards. A terrifying sound came from the outside. Everything was shattering and being destroyed. The entire secret zone was collapsing. The divine heart of the peacock actually flew out from the demon god's body. The branches of the ancient tree wrapped around it. The divine heart of the peacock allowed the branches to do so. They seemed to attract one another. It then released a resplendent divine halo and surged into Futian's World Tree life spirit. Buzz! Multicolored lights instantly shone from Futian's figure. The World Tree wrapped around the divine heart of the peacock as though it was forming a cocoon around it. It enveloped the heart within it. The heart then gradually disappeared, entering into his body and his life palace along with the life spirit of the World Tree. Outside the secret zone, in the domain chief's manor. Right then, in Donghua Palace, which was situated on a high mountain peak and had a waterfall that flowed down like ribbons, a group of cultivators was drinking wine and chatting casually. However, at that moment, a frightening commotion could be heard coming from below. Divine light directly punctured the space. The region below was the exit of the secret zone. From there, countless beams of divine light pierced the space and shot up into the heavens. Chief Ning stood up. His expression suddenly became very serious. He walked up to the edge of the waterfall and peered down below. He saw divine light penetrating the space across a vast and endless region. Intense rumbling could also be heard. The divine light contained unparalleled might. More and more beams appeared. After shattering the space, they pierced the heavens. They were extremely dazzling to behold. The giant-level figures in Donghua Palace all stood up frantically and walked up to the top of the waterfall. They revealed astonished expressions as they looked down below. What was happening? Chief, what is going on? The thunder-punishing Skylord asked. He looked at Chief Ning, who had a serious gaze as he stared down below. Something had happened. Yet how was this possible? The entire secret zone was a gigantic seal. A divine item was sealed inside. Let alone the junior cultivators, even giant-level figures like themselves could not break the seal. This seal was not set up by Chief Ning but the Imperial Palace. This was the will of the great Emperor. Buzz! A beam of divine light flew out, and a page of the heavenly scroll appeared in the sky. It was gigantic. The heavenly scroll released endless divine light of the seals, but it still could not prevent the shattering of the secret zone. Beams of resplendent divine light shot up into the sky and onto the heavenly scroll. The heavenly scroll seemed to be sentient as it twirled frenziedly. Endless divine light of the seals formed an array as they plunged downwards. However, they were still shattered. With loud ripping sounds, the heavenly scroll was torn apart and turned to ash and smoke. The next moment, an astonishing exploding sound came from inside the domain chief's manor. The ground beneath them cracked apart inch by inch, propagating endlessly into the area. The mountain peak that they were on also trembled violently, and cracks appeared beneath their feet. Chief! The people around him realized that something was off. What exactly was going on? However, Chief Ning did not seem to hear them. His facial expression was extremely ugly as he stared at the tattered heavenly scroll. His divine item had actually been destroyed? Silhouettes directly shot up from down below. They all appeared very pathetic. The first person to emerge was Ninghua. He stood in the sky and raised his head to look in the direction of Donghua Palace. He did not have a good expression on his face as well. Like Chief Ning, he still could not wrap his head around what had happened. The divine light gradually dissipated. Silhouettes emerged one after another. Various Renhuangs, as well as many demon emperors, appeared. They were somewhat confused. They never imagined that they would emerge in such a fashion. However, even if they managed to get out, it was pointless. They had not broken the seal themselves, so they still could not stand against the cultivators of the domain chief's manor. Chief Ning had an extremely sharp look in his eyes. He glanced over at the various cultivators. He then looked at Ninghua and asked, "What happened?" "The seal was broken," Ninghua replied. "How was it broken?" Chief Ning asked. Ninghua revealed a strange look. He recalled that Futian opened the door of the demon god temple. Ninghua still believed that the seal had unraveled itself. However, Futian had indeed opened the door and initiated the unsealing. Yunyan opened the door of the demon god temple and broke the seal, a voice cried out. The person who had spoken was not Ninghua, but Yan Hanqing, the crown prince of the great Yan ancient royal family. "That's impossible!" Chief Ning exclaimed as he looked at Yan Hanqing. How could Futian have possibly broken the seal? No matter how talented he was, Futian was only a 4th-tier middle-level Renhuang. "Chief, you can ask the others," Yan Hanqing replied. Chief Ning looked at Ninghua. Ninghua said, "When we entered the secret zone, there was a disturbance in the demon god temple. Right then, I sent Futian flying towards the demon god temple. He pushed open the door, and then everything else happened." It might be a coincidence. How could Yi Futian have entered the demon god temple? Chief Ning had an indifferent expression. Even he could not enter there. Yi Liunian. Chief Ning glanced around at the various cultivators. He asked, "What happened to Ling He from Lishao Palace and Yan Dongyang from the Yan Kingdom?" "Yi Liunian killed them," Ninghua replied. The expressions of the various giant-level figures froze. So, it was truly Yi Futian's doing? A murderous aura emanated from Emperor Yan and Ling Yunzi. Their auras enveloped the vast space. The Millet Emperor had excused himself and left because he already knew about this beforehand. "Where is Yi Liunian?" A terrifying aura emanated from Emperor Yan's figure. It enveloped the space below. His murderous intent burst forth undisguised. The other giant-level figure revealed strange expressions. Emperor Shi looked down below and said in a low voice, "Chief established the rule himself. Yi Liunian should know the consequences of defying it. Why did he still kill people in the secret zone?" Clearly, Emperor Shi wanted to know Yi Futian's motive for doing so. This was intended to help Yi Futian. If the members of the Yan Kingdom and Lishao Palace had attacked him first, Yi Futian would have an excuse. However, today, Yi Futian would certainly die. No one could save him. Various cultivators emerged one after another. Their figures floated in the sky as they looked towards Donghua Palace. The cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower were also here. Li Changxing also appeared. He took a step forward and bowed towards where Chief Ning was. He said, "Reporting to the chief. After all of us entered the secret zone, we reached the mountain range of demonic beasts and were attacked by demon emperors. Yet, during this incident, not only did the members of the Yan Kingdom and Lishao Palace not join forces with us to defeat the demon clan cultivators, they instead tried to kill us. At that time, dozens of Renhuangs pursued Yi Liunian. Among them were Yan Dongyang from Great Yan ancient royal family, as well as Ling He from Lishao Palace. Might I ask this, were the Yan Kingdom and Lishao Palace members trying to kill Yi Liunian? Or was Yi Liunian trying to kill them? May Chief judge fairly." Although Li Changxing was already aware that Chief Ning was behind all this, they could not mention this now. Even if they knew about this, they had to feign ignorance. That way, Chief Ning could at least fake his stance on the matter. Otherwise, if they were to tear off his mask, there would be no escape for them. "Utter nonsense!" someone yelled out in a cold tone. His voice shook the sky, causing Li Changxing's blood to churn. Emperor Yan stood at the edge of the cliff. He looked at Li Changxing intently. The pressure that acted on Li Changxing was insufferable. Emperor Yan said in a cold tone, "According to what you claim, Yi Liunian should not have survived. Vice Chief should have also seen this," said Li Changxing as he looked at Ninghua. "I arrived later and saw that several people had fallen to Yi Futian. I am not clear as to what happened before I arrived," Ninghua replied. "I saw what happened. We were passing by at that moment. The members of the two forces were pursuing Yi Liunian and the cultivators of the Wangshan Watchtower," a calm voice said. The person who had spoken was Jiang Yueli from Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow. After she said this, she did not reveal any more. This matter was too complicated to get involved in. It was not appropriate for them to interfere. However, there would not be an issue if she just mentioned what she saw. It would be best if a figure like Yi Futian could live. Although the hopes of him surviving were slim, she still helped out by mentioning this. At the very least, it could prove that these two major forces had attacked Yi Futian first. "When we were outside, we also mentioned that we would face each other if we had the chance. Yi Liunian also mentioned a group battle during the Donghua banquet," Yan Hanqing said in a cold tone. "Hence, after we entered the secret zone, we naturally wanted to experience the cultivation of the Renhuangs from Wangshan Watchtower. We were sparring and exchanging pointers. How can that be considered attacking them? Has Wangshan Watchtower lost even a single member?" However, Yi Futian defied the rule established by the chief and directly went for the kill. Even after Vice Chief forbade him from doing so, he continued to kill the Renhuangs of the Yan Kingdom as well as Lingshao Palace in front of everyone. "Hey!" a voice cried out. Qin Yi stood in midair as he looked at Yan Hanqing and said, Crown Prince of Great Yan ancient royal family, even though you are a ninth Tiren Huang, you speak so shamelessly? Their abilities were inferior, and they ended up being killed in Yi Liunyuan's counterattack. Why do you make it seem as though they just stood there and waited for Yi Liunyuan to kill them? In front of the demon god temple in the secret zone, how many Renhuangs from your two forces faced Yi Liunyuan alone? When they were killed instead, you claimed that Yi Liunyuan killed them in front of everyone. According to you, should Yi Liunyuan have just stood there and be killed? As Qinyi said this, everyone's gazes gradually fell on him. Frightening pressure enveloped his body, but Qinyi had no fear. He bowed slightly at Chief Ning and said, "Chief, I witnessed the entire thing. The two major forces were pursuing Yi Liunyuan all the way. He was merely forced to defend himself." "Where is Yi Liunyuan?" Chief Ning asked. His voice reverberated in the space and spread far and wide. Down below, a silhouette dashed out and became a beam of light that descended upon the peak. It was Yi Futian. He bowed slightly at Chief Ning, just like Li Changxing had done. He also understood the predicament he was in. Even though he knew what kind of person Chief Ning was, he still had to strive to stay alive. Reporting to the chief. The members of the Great Yan ancient royal family and Lingxiao Palace pursued me all the way in the secret zone. I was forced to counterattack, Yi Futian slowly said. Chief wanted us to train in the secret zone. By some fated coincidence, I accidentally opened the demon god temple, causing this series of events. I hope Chief can forgive this misstep. Yi Futian clearly knew what he was facing, but he still acted calmly, as though it was not a problem. Panic and fear were meaningless right now. Chief Ning looked at Yi Futian. Setting aside the matter with the Yan Kingdom and Lingxiao Palace, Yi Futian breaking the seal and causing the divine item to be destroyed was unforgivable. However, Chief Ning was the one who allowed the cultivators to enter the secret zone to train. He had no excuse for blaming Yi Futian. He had not mentioned that they could not enter. At that moment, the space suddenly fell silent for a short while. I believe that what they say is mostly the truth. Yi Liunyuan naturally wouldn't just sit there and await death given the conflict between these forces. As for being able to break the seal, as expected, this fellow is a genius. Emperor, she said with a smile. He appeared very casual about it, seemingly wanting to resolve the issue effortlessly. Emperor Shi, this person killed a prince of the Yan Kingdom and the Lingxiao Palace young palace lord in the secret zone, as well as many Renhuangs, Emperor Yan stated. Emperor Shi actually admired Yi Futian and was speaking up for him. Emperor Shi smiled and did not say any more. Such were cultivators. The situation faced by Yi Futian today was indeed very disadvantageous to him. These people would not question right and wrong. They only wanted results. They wanted Yi Futian's life. Now, it depended on how Chief Ning viewed this situation. Yi Futian voiced out. Before this, Chief claimed that the members who passed through to the training in the secret zone could enter the domain chief's manor to cultivate. I discussed this with the Millet Emperor before coming here. I came precisely to join domain chief's manor. That is why I followed the Millet Emperor and participated in the Donghua banquet. Now that the secret zone has shattered, I wonder whether or not I still have the chance to join the domain chief's manor to cultivate? Yi Futian's expression was calm as he bowed towards Chief Ning. This immediately caused everyone to look at him in astonishment. Yi Futian actually brought up joining domain chief's manor to cultivate now. This surprised everyone. Those who entered the secret zone were especially surprised. They had witnessed firsthand Ning Hua nearly killing Yi Futian. Under such circumstances, Yi Futian should have become sworn enemies with Ning Hua. Yet he swallowed his pride here and asked to join the domain chief's manor to cultivate. He was bold. Emperor Yan and Ling Yunzi both looked at him with strange expressions. This white-haired youth was indeed a genius. He actually brought up wanting to join the domain chief's manor in such a situation. Under normal circumstances, if they had no affiliations with the domain chief's manor, the chief might actually agree to accept him and protect him. Domain chief's manor would then have another outstanding monstrous figure. However, Yi Futian must not have known who was the mastermind behind Supreme Deity Donglai's death. Hence, it was impossible for Yi Futian to join Domain Chief's manor. Chief Ning would not harbor something that would later do him harm. Chief Ning looked at Yi Futian and said, I understand what all of you have said. Each side has its own story. It seems that the conflict between the great Yan ancient royal family, Lingxiao Palace, and Wangshan Watchtower cannot be reconciled. Regardless of whatever reason you had, you defying my rules and killing the cultivators of the two major forces is still the truth. Some say that it was with reason, but I cannot defend you. Hence, Yi Liuanian, you can forget about cultivating in the Domain Chief's manor. When they heard the chief's words, many people were stunned. It appeared that Chief Ning was giving up on this prominent figure. Such a monstrous existence was rejected by the Domain Chief's manor even though Yi Futian had actively stated that he wanted to join them. He has been rejected, thought the Renhuangs to themselves. A monstrous figure like Yi Futian had actually been rejected. Aside from that, the grudge between your three forces cannot be reconciled by others. As such, settle it among yourselves. Chief Ning continued. The various cultivators looked at the chief. He was giving up on Yi Futian. Settle it among yourselves. How could Yi Futian stand against two giant-level figures? It was certain death. Emperor Shi, thunder-punishing Skylord, sword goddess from divine palace of fluttering snow, and the others glanced at Chief Ning. The Millet Emperor had left. There were only the disciples of Wangshan Watchtower here now. Emperor Yan and Ling Yunzi, the Lingxiao Palace Lord, were both here. To ask them to settle the matter among themselves now was equivalent to declaring the death sentence for Yi Futian. How could the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower handle either Emperor Yan or Ling Yunzi alone? Chief Ning appeared to be impartial and took a middle stance, but in reality, he had already thrown Yi Futian into the deep end. The giant-level figures were all somewhat surprised. Why was Chief Ning giving up on such an extraordinary figure? Yi Futian had already made it clear his willingness to join the Domain Chief's manor to cultivate. He also mentioned that he came to participate in the Donghua banquet for this exact reason. They did not believe that Yi Futian was lying. After all, Yi Futian's situation before this was originally difficult. He had offended two major forces. Entering the Domain Chief's manor to cultivate would be beneficial for him. He could avoid the Yan Kingdom and Lingxiao Palace from targeting him. However, Chief Ning had turned down this offer. From the looks of it, Chief Ning was prejudiced against Yi Futian. Otherwise, with his position and identity, he could still protect Yi Futian. Chief, for you to be impartial is enough for the Yan Kingdom. We will naturally deal with this matter ourselves, Emperor Yan said. He swept a glance at Yi Futian, who was floating in the sky ahead, as well as the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower. A pressure that filled the skies radiated from his body. The powerful Renhuangs from Wangshan Watchtower immediately felt an extremely powerful pressure of the Great Path acting on them. Yi Liuanian from Wangshan Watchtower, you killed my son, Yan Dongyang, in the secret zone. You deserve to die. Emperor Yan's voice shook the heavens like the cry of a dragon. This caused the eardrums of the cultivators to vibrate violently. Many people sealed off their senses and protected their wills and minds. The voice of Emperor Yan contained the power of the way of sonic wave. Tui. Yi Futian let out a dull groan and coughed up a mouthful of fresh blood. Formless sound waves of the way of sonic wave swept towards him. They were like unblockable heavenly might. His body was sent flying outwards from the shockwave. His face turned as pale as a sheet. Emperor Yan had immediately attacked. He was prepared to kill Yi Futian. Emperor Yan raised his palm. A huge divine golden dragon appeared above Yi Futian. It was as though it was formed from the heavenly path. It took shape and enveloped Yi Futian's figure. The huge golden claws of the dragon hooked onto the space and enveloped the space that Yi Futian was in within it. Yi Futian had nowhere to run to. Yi Futian raised his head and saw the giant claw of the divine dragon slashing down towards him. It blocked out the sun and the sky. It descended upon him like divine might. He could not block it at all. His opponent was a giant-level figure. How could Yi Futian stand against him? Wait! At that moment, a voice called out. The golden claw that was slashing down suddenly stopped, hovering above Yi Futian's head. Emperor Yen turned around and looked at the person who had spoken. It was Emperor Shi. Emperor Shi, what advice do you wish to offer? Emperor Yen asked. Since both parties will be settling it among themselves, now that Millet Emperor isn't here, doesn't it seem inappropriate for you to attack them immediately? Emperor Shi asked calmly. He then looked at Chief Ning and said, Since that was the decision, at the very least, they should wait until Millet Emperor returns, right? Before this, I have always heard that Emperor Shi didn't concern himself with the affairs of the world. However, ever since you made it through your divine tribulation, you seem to have begun to concern yourself with the matters of the Donghua domain. Will you intervene in the grudge between our two parties? Emperor Yen asked. Emperor Shi had already made it through the first stage of his divine tribulation. His status was extraordinary. His ability was extremely powerful. Emperor Yen and Ling Yunzi were still somewhat cautious of him. If Emperor Shi intervened in this matter, things could be troublesome. Since Chief agreed to not interfere in this matter and allowed both sides to settle it themselves, it stands to reason that you should wait for the Millet Emperor to return before settling it among yourselves. Otherwise, how will the world assess the Donghua banquet this time around? Emperor Shi said with a smile. The Millet Emperor himself most likely left and escaped intentionally after knowing the truth of the matter. Ling Yunzi added. His murderous intent was intense. If it wasn't for the Donghua banquet and that there were many giant-level figures from the Donghua domain here, Emperor Yen and Ling Yunzi would have already attacked and eliminated Yi Futian and the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower. Huh! Just as Ling Yunzi said this, he realized that something was amiss. He looked up into the sky and saw the wind and the clouds shifting. It was as though an extremely powerful divine might have appeared. What is going on? A powerful pressure enveloped the heavens. In the vast space, everyone felt a suffocating pressure. It was not just them. At that moment, countless cultivators across the Donghua heavens were looking up into the heavens. Divine might descended from above and pressed down on the space. Countless people felt their hearts trembling violently inside their chests. What was this aura? It was too terrifying. It was like a divine might. Dong! A loud sound came from the sky. Countless cultivators in the Donghua heavens looked up. An extremely terrifying scene appeared in the heavens above. There was a silhouette there. However, right now, the silhouette appeared exceptionally minuscule, seemingly insignificant. On his back, he carried a divine watchtower. It was gigantic. Divine might emanated from the divine watchtower, sweeping across the vast space. A great pressure loomed over the Donghua heavens. It is the Millet Emperor! Someone cried out in surprise. What was he carrying on his back? The crowd was in awe. The Millet Emperor walked over while carrying a divine watchtower on his back. Dong! Every step he took, he advanced a vast distance across the endless space. The moment his footsteps landed, the continent shook violently. Divine might descended from the sky. Everyone could feel its suffocating power. What is the Millet Emperor going to do? Outside the domain chief's manor, countless people were looking up into the sky. They were witnessing this scene in awe. The Millet Emperor had returned with a divine item on his back. This was the divine watchtower that fortified Wangshan Watchtower. It was the true Wangshan Watchtower. The Millet Emperor was carrying on his back just like that. It was as though he was carrying part of the sky. Inside the domain chief's manor, the cultivators were similarly looking in his direction. This included the top figures of the Donghua Palace. Bang! There was another loud ring. As the skies trembled violently, the Millet Emperor's silhouette appeared in the sky above Donghua Palace. He appeared above all of the giant-level figures, carrying the divine watchtower on his back. At that moment, the crowd finally knew why the Millet Emperor had suddenly disappeared and left. It seems that he already knew about the situation in the secret zone. He promptly returned to Wangshan Watchtower. Now, the Millet Emperor came back carrying Wangshan Watchtower. He went that far, the giant-level figures thought to themselves when they saw this scene. He actually returned carrying the divine watchtower. He was prepared to fight. The expressions of Emperor Yen and Ling Yunzi changed. They stared at the silhouette in midair as well as that astonishing heavenly might. Chief Ning also looked up at the Millet Emperor. His eyes narrowed. Just a while ago, the divine item of the domain chief's manor had been destroyed. Futian had broken the seal and resulted in its destruction. Right now, Millet Emperor brought over another divine item. The Millet Emperor's figure shook, and the divine watchtower immediately slid off his back. There was a loud rumble that reverberated far and wide. The gigantic divine watchtower stood in the sky and suppressed this part of the space. Instantly, an astonishing storm swept out. Many renhuangs fell to the ground, unable to withstand the power of suppression. Chapter 2064 Enforced the law on behalf of the great emperor. The Millet Emperor was like a deity as he stood in the sky above the Donghua Palace. The divine watchtower stood next to him, like a gate of the heavens. It suppressed everything below. Everyone in the domain chief's manor could sense this frightening power. As expected, Millet Emperor had known of this news beforehand. He had left before this to return to the Wanshan watchtower and retrieve the divine watchtower. He was prepared to wage war. This time, there was going to be a huge commotion during the Donghua banquet. A storm was brewing. The other cultivators realized this. They looked up at the silhouette of Wanshan watchtower far off in the sky above. They were curious as to what had happened. Millet Emperor had carried the divine watchtower over here. He stood in the sky above domain chief's manor and suppressed this part of the sky. Emperor Yen accused in an indifferent tone. Chief, what I said was true. The Millet Emperor knew before this that the members of his force had defied the rules set by Chief and had brutally murdered the Yen Kingdom and Lingxiao Palace's disciples. Hence, he intentionally went back to make preparations and came here to pressure us. He does not take Chief seriously in this Donghua banquet. His tone was oozing with a chilly aura. Wanshan watchtower was a divine item and was very powerful. Rumor had it that it was an ancient treasure. There were also rumors that Wanshan watchtower was a gate of the heavens before the heavenly path collapsed. By some fateful encounter, the Millet Emperor obtained it. Its might was extremely frightening. Various cultivators were cautious of him. This was also the reason why they eliminated Supreme Deity Donglai but not the Millet Emperor. Carrying Wanshan watchtower, the Millet Emperor was already enough to pose a threat to them. This time, Chief organized the Donghua banquet and gathered the various forces. The disciples of Wanshan watchtower first defied the rule of killing cultivators in the secret zone. Now, the Millet Emperor wishes to stir up a storm in the Donghua domain by carrying the divine watchtower over here. Incredible! Lingxiao Palace Lord, Ling Yunzi also spoke up. It was as though he placed all the responsibility on the Millet Emperor and the members of Wanshan watchtower. From the looks of it, they had to get rid of Millet Emperor and the members of Wanshan watchtower this time. Otherwise, they would eventually become a thorn in their side. Chief, the Millet Emperor might have figured out something. Ling Yunzi told Chief Ning over transmitted thoughts. Chief Ning looked up at the Millet Emperor. Before this, Ning Hua had also briefly explained to him what had happened. Based on his judgment, be it the cultivators of Wanshan watchtower or the Millet Emperor, they probably no longer trusted him. Hence, they had immediately prepared for battle. That meant that the other party had indeed figured out something. It was just that owing to his ability and position, they did not state it outright. They could only endure it for now. When he thought of this, Chief Ning made his decision. From the looks of it, the Millet Emperor and the forces of Wanshan watchtower needed to be eliminated. The divine item of Domain Chief's manor, the heavenly scroll of sealing, had been destroyed. They needed to replace it with another divine item to fortify the position of the Domain Chief's manor. Although this divine watchtower was not compatible with Chief Ning's cultivation, it was still considered an absolute treasure. Chief Ning said, Millet Emperor, this is the Donghua banquet. For you to carry the divine watchtower here, are you planning to suppress the various forces of the Donghua domain as well as my domain chief's manor? How presumptuous of you! No one could sense his emotions from his tone. He still appeared very calm, but his words already indicated his stance. Before this, he had said that both sides should settle their differences. There seemed to be some changes. These words were already chastising the Millet Emperor. Before the Millet Emperor arrived, Emperor Yan wanted to attack Yi Futian. Chief Ning did not speak out and did not stop Emperor Yan. Now that the Millet Emperor had arrived, although the commotion he created was larger, he only did this as a last resort. If he did not do so, he could not withstand the power of Emperor Yan and Ling Yunzi, two peak figures, alone. Hence, he had directly carried the Divine Watchtower over here. He was already prepared for the worst-case scenario. Chief, you worry too much. The Yan Kingdom and Lishao Palace have gone against the Wangshan Watchtower at every turn, the Millet Emperor replied. Hence, I had no choice but to return home and prepare. I carried the Divine Watchtower here only to ensure that I can lead the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower away from here. I hope Chief can forgive this. His voice shook the skies. If that is the case, put your Divine Watchtower away and let me handle this matter. Chief Ning continued as he looked at the Millet Emperor. Yi Futian and the other members swept a glance at the chief. He would handle the matter? Before this, he had already shown how he would handle the matter. He would not get involved with either side, allowing both parties to settle it among themselves. Just now, when the Millet Emperor was not around, Emperor Yan directly attacked Yi Futian. Fortunately, Emperor Shi had stopped Emperor Yan. Now that the Millet Emperor had returned, Chief Ning wanted him to put the Divine Watchtower away. This was Chief Ning's way of handling things. This matter involves the grudge between our two parties. Chief, you do not need to worry. We will settle it ourselves. How could the Millet Emperor possibly put the Divine Watchtower away? He looked down below and said, The grudge between Wangshan Watchtower and the Yan Kingdom as well as Lingshao Palace will not involve any other force. This was what Chief Ning had promised before. Both sides would settle it among themselves. Chief Ning stared at the Millet Emperor as pressure emanated from his body. His gaze also gradually turned cold. He said, This is the domain chief's manner of the Donghua domain. Today is also the Donghua banquet. It seems that you do not take my words seriously anymore. The Millet Emperor looked at Chief Ning. These words were completely unreasonable. From his attitude, Millet Emperor also understood that Chief Ning wanted to forcefully be a part of this and chose his side. From the looks of it, them wanting to bear the ridicule and temper their rage in order not to offend the domain chief's manner would not work. The other party was not going to let them go. That is not my intention, the Millet Emperor replied. The Millet Emperor had already stated his stance, but if Chief Ning wanted to take part forcefully, he could not do anything about that. Any reason that Chief Ning gave would have been sufficient. Humph! Chief Ning coldly snorted. The pressure from his body grew stronger, becoming extremely intense. His gaze was no longer calm, instead containing a cold aura. He stared at the Millet Emperor in the sky and said, Yi Liuyan defied my will and brutally murdered the cultivators who entered the secret zone. Regardless of whatever reason he had for doing so, what is done is done. I wanted to give face to you and Wangshan Watchtower by not getting involved even though he defied my rule. However, you brought your Divine Watchtower here and entered Domain Chief's manor with such a show of force. It seems that you are the same as Yi Liuyan. You have not taken the Donghua banquet seriously at all. As Chief Ning was speaking, his aura of the Great Path emanated outwards and enveloped the endless space. Everyone could feel the pressure coming from him. In Donghua Palace, the giant-level figures all looked at Chief Ning. They revealed looks of profound understanding. So that was why. From the very beginning, Chief Ning, who ruled over the Donghua domain, had already decided. He allowed the other party to go after Yi Futian and did not get involved, appearing as an amiable person. However, given the current situation where the Millet Emperor came with the Divine Watchtower, he could no longer maintain his facade. He could only lay his stance bare. He was going after Yi Futian. Yi Futian would not be able to escape. The Millet Emperor swept a glance at Chief Ning. As expected, he had directly revealed his goal and dropped his facade. The Millet Emperor threatened. I do not care who set the rules. I only know that the disciples of Wangshan Watchtower have done nothing wrong. Today, I will leave with them. I will kill anyone who dares touch a cultivator of Wangshan Watchtower. Whoever kills a junior of Wangshan Watchtower, I will do the same to their juniors. He stepped forward and placed his hand on the divine watchtower. Terrifying loud rumbling sounds could be heard immediately. Countless divine tablets seemed to appear in the sky. They descended from above and enveloped the entire Domain Chief's manor. There were so many people in Domain Chief's manor. Even Chief Ning was cautious. Unless they could instantly subdue the Millet Emperor, if Wangshan Watchtower came crashing down, the heavens and earth would be shattered and torn apart. Countless people would die then. He would kill the juniors of whoever killed his juniors? Did this include Ninghua? The Millet Emperor is quite savage today, the thunder-punishing Skylord said to Emperor Shi over transmitted thoughts. This time, the Millet Emperor had fallen out with the Domain Chief. Even though he was going against 3 giant-level figures, one of which was the chief who stood at the peak of the Donghua domain, he was still unafraid. Emperor Shi replied over transmitted thoughts. Before this, I found it strange as to why Ling Yunzi was always flattering Chief. Now, I seem to have glimpsed some clues as to why. From the looks of it, Chief and Ling Yunzi have long been in cahoots. Their relationship is most likely not ordinary. There is also the great Yen ancient royal family. It seems that there is more than meets the eye about the death of Supreme Deity Dong Lai. They were all figures at the peak of the domain. They weren't foolish. The other giant-level figures also vaguely realized what was going on. However, the Millet Emperor's show of force still came as a surprise to everyone. As expected of the Millet Emperor, only a cultivator at the peak would show such boldness. When Ling Yunzi and Emperor Yen heard Millet Emperor's words, they laughed sinisterly. They were waiting for this end result. The only pity was that Ling He and Yen Dongyang had perished. However, the Millet Emperor and the members of Wangshan Watchtower were about to join them. After today, there would be one less figure and force at the peak of the Donghua domain. Since the Millet Emperor had said so, Chief Ning did not hold back. Chief Ning looked up at the Millet Emperor. He had an imposing manner, and his expression was cold and indifferent. He said, I was tasked by the great Emperor to oversee the Donghua domain. I have always hoped for the prosperity of the Donghua domain, and that more prominent figures would emerge. Although the various forces of the Donghua domain had their conflicts and disputes, I also hoped that they would get along. Hence, I organized the Donghua banquet. I also set rules before all of you entered the secret zone. However, the Millet Emperor wishes for the peace of the Donghua domain to be shattered. If that is the case, I will enforce the law on behalf of the great Emperor. Millet Emperor, I find you guilty. Chapter 2065, Falling Out. Enforcing the law on behalf of the great Emperor. Millet Emperor was guilty. Ning Yuan was the domain chief of the Donghua domain, the one who oversaw the domain. He claimed that Millet Emperor was guilty and that he was enforcing the law on behalf of the great Emperor. He officially declared that he was going to kill Millet Emperor. The significance of his statement in the Donghua domain could not be understated. These words would determine the fate of the Wangshan Watchtower as well as Millet Emperor. At that moment, countless cultivators inside and outside of Domain Chief's manor felt their hearts tremble. The name of the Wangshan Watchtower might be erased from the Donghua domain. After all, Ning Yuan was the overseer of the Donghua domain. Since he had made up his mind, it was impossible for the Wangshan Watchtower to exist in the domain anymore. Even the giant-level figures of the various forces looked at Ning Yuan in astonishment. He was going to deal with the Wangshan Watchtower. They never imagined that such a storm would be swept up during the Donghua banquet. It seemed that this chief had long intended to eliminate the Wangshan Watchtower. What greater schemes were at play here? Millet Emperor lowered his head and looked at the proud figure standing in Donghua Palace. Before the Donghua banquet was held, he already had a bad premonition. After Li Changxing sent him the message, he understood why Ling Shao Palace dared to go against the Wangshan Watchtower together with great Yen ancient royal family so unscrupulously in front of everyone back on Turtle Deity Island. It turned out that Domain Chief's manor was backing them. Hence, they had no scruples to do so. Recalling that Domain Chief's manor had stepped out to mediate the matter of the death of Supreme Deity Dong Lai, Millet Emperor could not help but feel a sense of mockery. He never imagined that he had been fooled for so many years and that the person behind all this was the domain chief, Ning Yuan. He had always wanted to get to the bottom of the matter. Now that he finally knew the truth, he felt a wave of sadness and grief. Ning Yuan, the domain chief of the Donghua domain, had such sinister schemes. This was definitely not good for the domain. Chief, you probably have wanted to eliminate me for a long time, Millet Emperor suddenly said. Now you finally found an excuse to do so. Since Ning Yuan had already decided to enforce the law on behalf of the great emperor, and was prepared to personally join the battlefield to deal with Millet Emperor, then, Millet Emperor did not need to hesitate. He did not need to tolerate the other party anymore. If that was the case, they might as well stir the pot even further and let the imperial palace of the Divine Prefecture know what kind of person the domain chief was. Ning Yuan looked up at Millet Emperor. Millet Emperor continued saying, Great Yen ancient royal family and Ling Shao Palace have been against us all this while. On Turtle Deity Island, they joined forces to deal with the disciples of the Wangshan Watchtower. Chief, you also turned a blind eye back then. Now, during the Donghua banquet, you have done the same. Ning Hua tried to kill Yi Liuanian in the secret zone before investigating the truth. Domain Chief's manor has already chosen its side but just did not reveal it. Am I right? Presumptuous, Ning Yuan replied in a cold tone. His figure gradually floated upwards. Immediately, a powerful grand seal great path appeared in the vast space. Countless sealing runes circled around them, and immediately sealed off the space. Since it has come to this, it doesn't matter even if I am presumptuous. I wish to ask Chief something. Who killed Dong Lai? Millet Emperor asked. His voice shook the heavens and the earth, reverberating inside and outside of the domain chief's manor. Countless people could hear him clearly. They had heard everything before this as well publicly. In an instant, across the vast space, all the cultivators, inside and outside of the domain chief's manor, were in an uproar. Millet Emperor was interrogating the chief as to who killed Supreme Deity Dong Lai. His meaning was clear. Did that mean that Chief Ning Yuan was also involved in the death of Supreme Deity Dong Lai? Millet Emperor was implying that, before this, Great Yen ancient royal family and Ling Shao Palace had the backing of another superpower, Domain Chief's manor. Could this be true? Many people were suspicious of this. After all, this was a one-sided claim from Millet Emperor. If it were true, the chief's schemes were too sinister. Was he truly trying to unify the Donghua domain under his rule? Although the Donghua domain was considered a part of the Divine Prefecture and the forces of the domain were under the jurisdiction of Domain Chief's manor, in reality, each superpower was independent and was not controlled by any other force, including Domain Chief's manor. Unless there was a decree from the Imperial Palace, which they might obey to some extent, Domain Chief's manor could not command the superpowers of the entire domain. For the various cultivators to participate in the Donghua banquet, they were already showing the Domain Chief due respect. For instance, could Chief Ning Yuan order Emperor Shi, thunder-punishing Sky Lord and Sword Goddess of Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow around? It was obviously impossible. However, if it was as Millet Emperor claimed it to be, the Domain Chief was very ambitious. He wanted absolute authority over the Donghua domain. Millet Emperor, you are out of your mind, Ning Yuan said as he looked at Millet Emperor. I organized the Donghua banquet in accordance to the will of the great Emperor that martial arts in the Donghua domain will prosper. Yet, Millet Emperor wishes to stir up conflict and does not listen to dissuasion. If that is the case, from this day forth, the name of the Wangshan Watchtower shall be eliminated from the Donghua domain. However, this matter does not concern the disciples of the Wangshan Watchtower. I can overlook their involvement. However, Yi Liuanian defied my rules, so he needs to remain here. The rest of you may leave. The name of the Wangshan Watchtower was eliminated from the Donghua domain. As expected, Domain Chief Ning Yuan would not allow the Wangshan Watchtower to continue existing. However, he was willing to spare the cultivators of the Wangshan Watchtower. He only wanted Yi Futian. The giant-level figures understood everything when they saw this scene. The disciples of the Wangshan Watchtower were insignificant to Ning Yuan. It was the same with Eastern Deity Island. Since the chief spared Eastern Deity Island once, he would not go after them again. After all, he was the ruler of the Donghua domain. He could not go around massacring people as he pleased. However, he had to take Futian into custody. This person had extraordinary talent, possibly even above that of Zongchan. Prior to this, he had also broken the seal. Chief Ning did not know what benefits Futian had received from doing so yet. How could he let Futian go? Ning Yuan rejected Futian's appeal to join Domain Chief's manor as a cultivator. He wanted Futian's life. The Renhuangs of the Wangshan watchtower in all directions looked at Ning Yuan. Li Changxing said, "The Wangshan watchtower is not in the wrong in this incident today. Since Chief has made your stance clear, you do not need to reprimand the Wangshan watchtower as well as blame Master. All of this stems from the Yan Kingdom and Lingxiao Palace. The world will be the judge of who is right and who is wrong. As for leaving here, as disciples of the Wangshan watchtower, we will naturally leave together. You seek your own deaths," said Emperor Yan as he swept a glance at the crowd. The Renhuangs of the Wangshan watchtower would all die today. In reality, they had always wanted to deal with the Wangshan watchtower. Now they had the chance to do so. After today, the Wangshan watchtower would cease to exist in the Donghua domain. "Changxing, Zongchan, take the others and leave. Retreat back to the Wangshan watchtower," Millet Emperor ordered. This battle was a battle of giant-level figures. Li Changxing and the others would be at a severe disadvantage here. Emperor Yan and Ling Yunzi stared at Li Changxing and the others. Millet Emperor continued saying, "If any of you attack the juniors of the Wangshan watchtower, I will not hesitate to massacre all of you." "Understood," Li Changxing replied as he nodded his head. They understood the situation they were in. Remaining here was extremely disadvantageous for them. They could only retreat for now. With their levels of cultivation, they were of no help to Millet Emperor. It was only after they had escaped that Millet Emperor would have the chance to retreat as well. Millet Emperor had carried the Divine Watchtower here for their sakes. Otherwise, with his level of cultivation, if he had escaped before this, no one could have done anything about it. "Let's go," Li Changxing said. The cultivators of the Wangshan watchtower immediately took to the skies and headed out of Domain Chief's manor. Ning Yuan looked at them and said, "I said that Yi Liunian must stay behind." As he said this, Ning Hua stepped out. At the same time, other cultivators from Domain Chief's manor also dashed in the direction Li Changxing and the others were escaping. On the other side, the Renhuangs of Great Yan ancient royal family and Lingxiao Palace also left their positions and chased after Li Changxing and the others. However, Ning Yuan, Emperor Yan and Ling Yunzi, these three giant-level figures did not move. They remained standing where they were, seemingly uninvolved with this matter. However, the situation was clearly extremely disadvantageous for the cultivators of the Wangshan watchtower. Ning Hua alone was an invincible existence, and was difficult to deal with. Emperor Yan and Ling Yunzi looked at Millet Emperor mockingly. Even if the three of them did not attack, Ning Hua and the other cultivators were more than sufficient to kill off Li Changxing and the others. None of them would escape. Whether Millet Emperor himself would make it out of here alive today remained to be seen. Millet Emperor did not attack. Pressure of the great path that was frightening beyond comparison descended upon the area. However, Millet Emperor was still waiting for Li Changxing and the rest to escape far from this region. Ning Yuan was similarly waiting for Ning Hua and the other cultivators to leave and for the members of Domain Chief's manor to retreat. They all had their concerns. If they immediately started fighting, the junior figures would not be able to withstand their power. Both sides clearly did not want such a situation to occur. Hence, they had reached a tacit understanding. However, the pressure in the vast space became more and more intense. It was suffocating. The Millet Emperor's divine consciousness shrouded the boundless space. Futian and the other cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower were gone, but they were still within the scope of detection. At his level of cultivation, his divine consciousness was more than powerful. Not only him, but it was the same with the other masters. Though they were physically here, they had also noticed the movement in the distance. Ninghua and the others didn't seem to be in a hurry to catch up with the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower. They seemed to deliberately keep their distance. Besides, many cultivators from the domain chief's manor were also retreating. However, many Renhuang outside the domain chief's manor were fixated on the sky above, their hearts greatly troubled. The Donghua banquet had turned into an internal conflict of the Donghua domain, and even the domain chief's manor was involved. The Millet Emperor believed that the chief had taken aim at Wangshan Watchtower. "Those who have nothing to do with this matter, leave within 10 breaths' time," said the Millet Emperor, allowing other Renhuang to leave this space. Everyone stiffened but soon flickered their way to withdraw speedily without any hesitation. The Millet Emperor was preparing to battle right here. In an instant, all the cultivators retreated into the distance, getting as far away from the domain chief's manor as possible. The Millet Emperor looked down at Chief Ningyuan and said, "Ningyuan, you keep claiming that this is a grievance among Wangshan Watchtower, the Yan Kingdom, and Lishao Palace, but in the end, you made your move. You are not worthy of being in charge of Donghua Domain." When his voice fell, the watchtower flew high into the sky as a terrifying power of the Great Path was released from it. Suddenly, with the domain chief's manor as the center, countless divine tablets and stone gates fell down, turning into a divine wall that sealed the domain chief's manor. From where he was, the watchtower seemed to be the only exit, like a heavenly gate. The domain chief's manor was suppressed and shut down, clearly meant to be a battlefield. The Millet Emperor completely let himself go without any further inhibitions. The disciples of Wangshan Watchtower had to resign themselves to their fates. He closed up the space and would not participate. Neither could the other 3 major opponents, so they had to depend on their own destiny now. After seeing him taking action, the sacred light surrounded the space, and within the forbidden space, there were countless characters of seals appearing, covering this space. Some even directly falling on the divine wall, blocking the way of suppression, creating a twofold blocking. It was based on a tacit understanding that they let those youngsters leave without the participation of either side. This was their battle. If one of them took action, none of the youngsters on either side would be able to bear it. Thus, the situation at hand. Now, both sides had sealed the space at the same time, using it as a battlefield. The rest of the youngsters had to depend on themselves as to what happens later. Of course, to Ningyuan, they had an absolute advantage. Ninghua led Renhuang from the 3 major powers in pursuit. Where could those Renhuang from Wangshan Watchtower escape? In that battle, Ningyuan had no doubts, and even fewer doubts about what was about to happen here. The Millet Emperor himself was extraordinary in strength, and now that he had come with the Watchtower, his combat power increased to another level. He was definitely a dangerous character at this point. However, the divine items at Domain Chief's manor were destroyed, and neither Emperor Yen nor Ling Yunzi had carried any divine items with them. Even so, as the 3 major figureheads, they still had the absolute advantage. Ningyuan was even confident that he himself alone was enough to deal with the Millet Emperor, who came with the watchtower. However, on account that the Millet Emperor had thrown all care to the wind, he could not afford to be careless. The Millet Emperor stood under the watchtower, like a deity who had integrated with the great path of this heaven and earth. Rumbling thunder rang out as the great path of suppression enveloped this space. The 3 major figureheads felt they were being fettered by the invisible oppressive force. Besides them, there were also other powerful figures that remained in Donghua Palace. They did not leave but stood by to watch the battle, wanting to witness this showdown. The watchtower released an extremely dazzling divine brilliance, and an ancient aura came from beyond the sky. Countless divine brilliance fell on the Millet Emperor, as if he had been completely integrated with the watchtower. He raised his palm and pressed it downward in the sky. From the firmament, a shining divine light bloomed as it penetrated the sky. As if the sky had collapsed, it attacked the 3 cultivators in a flash. At this time, outside where those Renhuang had retreated to in the distance, they experienced true fright as they witnessed the situation yonder. With the domain chief's manor as the center, there was a storm of the great path frantically rushing towards it. There seemed to be a divine light falling from the sky that lit up the forbidden void with dazzling radiance. but they couldn't see the battle inside the battlefield. Today, the Millet Emperor came carrying the watchtower to battle Chief Ning Yuan, and Emperor Yan was there with Ling Yunzi. No one knew if this master of Wangshan watchtower could leave alive. In another place, Yi Futian and the others moving forward quickly in Donghua heavens, heading in the direction where the Ling family compound was located. They wanted to take the space teleportation Grand Matrix to return to Wangshan watchtower. At this time, Li Changxing, Zhong Chan, and other cultivators from Wangshan watchtower were looking worrisome. They weren't concerned about themselves, but they were worried about the Millet Emperor. In this battle, the fate of the Millet Emperor was unknown. If there were only Emperor Yan and Ling Yunzi, they wouldn't be so worried. But there was another man, the one who was in charge of Donghua domain, Chief Ning Yuan. No one knew the true origin of Ning Yuan or how strong he was. Even if he came with the watchtower, Li Changxing and the others still didn't think that the Millet Emperor had a great chance of winning. The chiefs of the 18 domains were powerful characters. Only those transcendental figures in each domain could stand with them shoulder to shoulder. Although the Millet Emperor established Wangshan watchtower and became a principality himself, he was still far behind. Behind them, the mighty group of Renhuang chased through the void and began to accelerate their speed forward. Ninghua stepped into the void with divine light shining upon his body. His speed was lightning fast. Almost there, the patriarch of the Lung family said. They were originally there to observe the ceremony and never thought that they would encounter this situation. Based on their previous relationship with Wangshan watchtower, they were, of course, on the side of Wangshan watchtower. But Lin Qinghan was not here. She was a disciple of Donghua Academy. She would be fine as long as she's under Donghua Academy's protection. However, at this moment, the face of Ling's clan leader paled. Not only him, but Li Changxing's divine consciousness had already seen the situation inside the Ling family compound, and his expression was equally gloomy. The once prosperous Ling family compound had now turned into a ruin. It was under attack, and the space teleportation Grand Matrix had been destroyed as well. At this moment, those who were currently occupying the compound included the Yan family. They were the ones who challenged Ling Qinghan at the first battle on Dongwang Banquet, a branch of the ancient royal family of Yan. Damn it! The clan leader of the Ling family watched the scene in front of him with red eyes. Many were lying in ruins. His clan had been through a bloodbath. These two major clans had always had frictions over the years. Now, the other side took this opportunity and slaughtered the Ling family. It seemed that this matter of Wangshan watchtower had dragged you all into it. Li Changxing sighed, and his eyes also showed great pain. This conflict that was aimed at Wangshan watchtower would be avenged sooner or later, because of the death of Supreme Being Donglai, because the man behind all of it was Chief Ning Yuan of the Domain Chief's Manor. Therefore, this day would come sooner rather than later, and they had to destroy Wangshan watchtower. Yi Futian's appearance had provided the perfect excuse to speed up their plan to attack Wangshan watchtower. Even if Yi Futian were not a factor, there would be other excuses, just like the intervention of the Domain Chief's Manor was purely for superfluous reasons. I never expected it would be the chief. Storm Demon's eyes were icy. He, too, understood that the person who caused this chaos was Domain Chief, Ning Yuan, of Domain Chief's Manor. Without him, the Yan Kingdom and Lishao Palace would not dare to do this. Although they were able to suppress Wangshan watchtower, they were not so blatant as to commit outright slaughter. After all, the Millet Emperor was there. If they were to start the massacre, they would be equally in trouble. But because of Ning Yuan, those people dared to be so imprudent. Back then, Supreme Being Donglai probably perished under such circumstances as well. The cultivators from the Yan family levitated into the sky, intercepting them. There was an even stronger reinforcement behind to hunt them. There seemed to be nowhere for them to escape. Continue ahead and attack, Li Changxing said. As he was approaching the Ling family compound, he was releasing a terrible murderous intent. Not only him, but Zhong Chan and other Renhuang were the same. The murderous intent on them was frightening. A long spear appeared in Yi Futian's hand as a monstrous battle intent erupted, and divine light surrounded his body. Cold murderous intent shot out from his eyes, accompanied by an extreme chill. The group was moving fast, and within a few moments, they had already arrived at Ling's family compound. The Yen family cultivators stood in the void above the ruins, and an aura of the Great Path erupted. Under the leadership of the Yen family's patriarch, they lined up with a true dragon surrounding each of them, suppressing this corner of the sky. When they saw those cultivators coming their way, they immediately unleashed the attack of the Great Path at the same time. All the true dragons roared and rushed forward, flooding the void. Li Changxing and Zhong Chan were the fastest, traversing through directly, and the body of those massive divine dragons shattered and burst one by one. Likewise, Yi Futian was fast to the extreme, turning into a stream of light. A powerful Renhuang of the seventh realm was in front of him, with a mighty aura erupting from his body. When he saw Yi Futian attack, he raised his hand to blast out an overwhelming dragon seal. Buzz! Yi Futian's spear lanced out, and the overwhelming spear intent blasted directly on the dragon seal, splitting it from the middle, shattering it. With a wet sound, the spear penetrated through his opponent's body. A Renhuang of the seventh realm pulverized in the void instantaneously, with no time for even a scream. "Be careful!" the patriarch of the Yen family yelled, and he didn't look so good. Their order was to destroy the teleportation Grand Matrix and intercept it here, but they didn't expect that reinforcements would come so slowly. It was as if they didn't care whether they lived or died. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.